You are about to enter the definitive deep dive experience into the universe of Walter White. Close your eyes for a moment. Well, metaphorically, because you need to read this. And picture the New Mexico desert. The heat shimmering off the pavement, the smell of sagebrush and motor oil, and the sound of an RV engine sputtering its last breath. We are going to embark on a journey through the most insane, mind-blowing, and legendary facts about Breaking Bad that you can possibly imagine, designed to not just inform you, but to transport you back to 308 Negra Arroyo Lane. This isn't just a list. It is a narrative exploration of the genius, the accidents, and the pure chaos that created the greatest television drama of all time. Let's start right at the beginning with an image that is burned into the retinas of every single fan. A pair of khaki trousers floating through the desert air. It is the very first thing we see in the pilot episode. Before we meet the man, before we see the meth, before we see the gas mask, we see pants. A pair of beige trousers flying through the air in slow motion, tumbling against the stark blue sky of the American Southwest before getting run over by a careening RV. It is iconic. But here's the crazy part that most fans completely missed until years later. Those pants aren't just a random prop thrown out for a visual gag. They are a masterclass in long-term storytelling and accidental brilliance. When Walter White, played by the legendary Bryan Cranston, stands in the middle of the road in his tighty-whities, pointing a gun at the horizon, he is wearing the shirt and the underwear, but the pants are gone. Why? Because they flew off the RV. That makes sense. But jump forward 5 years in real time and 2 years in showtime to the legendary episode Ozymandias, arguably the single greatest hour of television ever produced. In that episode, Walter is rolling a barrel of money through the desert. If you look closely at the background, and I mean really closely with the eyes of a hawk, you can see a pair of khaki pants lying in the dirt. Vince Gilligan, the genius showrunner, and his team actually put the pants back in the exact same geographic location for the end of the series. It is a detail so subtle, so hidden, that 99% of viewers missed it. It symbolizes that Walt's journey has come full circle. He started losing his pants in the desert, and he ended losing his soul in the exact same spot. However, there is a tiny, almost invisible continuity error here that drives hardcore fans crazy in the best way possible. In the pilot, the RV runs over the pants. You can see the tire crush them, but in Ozymandias, the pants look relatively pristine, just dusty. Did the desert wind iron them out? Or did the prop department just forget to distress them enough? It creates this beautiful, unintended mystery, the immortal pants of Heisenberg. It is this level of obsession with detail that hooks us. You have to wonder, did the writers plan that from day one? Probably not. But the fact that they cared enough to put them back there 5 seasons later is what separates this show from everything else. Now let's shift gears to a what-if scenario that will absolutely melt your brain. Picture Walter White. You see Bryan Cranston. You see the bald head, the goatee, the pork pie hat. It is impossible to unsee him. But in an alternate timeline, the multiverse of casting, Walter White could have been played by Matthew Broderick. Yes, Ferris Bueller himself. Or, get this, John Cusack. When Vince Gilligan was pitching the show to AMC, the executives were terrified. They looked at Bryan Cranston and they didn't see a menacing drug lord. They saw Hal from Malcolm in the middle. They saw the goofy, roller-skating, speed-walking dad who was afraid of his wife, Lois. The executives literally said, "We cannot cast the dad from Malcolm in the Middle as a meth cook. It will be a joke." They wanted a movie star. They offered the role to Matthew Broderick, who, thank the chemistry gods, turned it down. Can you imagine Ferris Bueller saying, "I am the one who knocks"? It would have been a disaster. They offered it to John Cusack, and he also passed. Vince Gilligan, however, knew Cranston was the guy. Why? Because years earlier, Gilligan had written an episode of The X-Files called Drive. In that episode, Cranston played a rampant anti-Semite who had to keep driving west at high speeds or his head would explode due to a government experiment. It sounds crazy, but Cranston's performance was so heartbreaking, so human despite playing a despicable character, that Gilligan never forgot it. He showed that episode to the AMC executives. He forced them to watch it. After seeing Cranston convey that level of pathos and terror, the executives finally said, "Okay, maybe Hal can break bad." It is a testament to the fact that sometimes the studio executives have no idea what they are doing, and you need a visionary to fight for the right actor. If Matthew Broderick had said yes, we would be living in a completely different pop culture reality right now. Speaking of reality, let's talk about the blue meth. Blue sky. The product that built the empire, it is iconic. The color blue is synonymous with the show. You see blue rock candy in candy stores now because of this series. But here's a secret that might ruin the magic for the science nerds out there, but fascinates the rest of us. Pure methamphetamine is not blue. It is clear. Crystal clear. When the writers decided to make Walt's meth blue, they were actually creating a scientific impossibility within the logic of the show's own universe of hyperrealism. They brought in a real science advisor, Dr. Donna Nelson, a chemistry professor from the University of Oklahoma. She is the unsung hero of the show. She checked the formulas, she drew the chemical structures on the chalkboard, and she made sure Walt sounded like a real genius. But when they told her, "We want the meth to be blue to show it is pure," she had to tell them, "Actually, if it's pure, it's colorless. Blue would mean it has impurities." Vince Gilligan looked at her and essentially said, "We know, but it looks cool." So they made an artistic choice. They prioritized visual storytelling over chemical accuracy for just this one thing. And it worked. The blue color became a brand. It distinguished Walt's product from the jagged, dirty street meth. But here is the most insane, mind-blowing ripple effect of this decision. Real-life drug dealers started dyeing their meth blue. After Breaking Bad became a global phenomenon, police departments across the United States started reporting busts of blue-colored methamphetamine. The criminals were trying to brand their product like Heisenberg. They were adding food coloring, which actually made the drugs less pure and more dangerous, just to mimic a TV show. It is a terrifying example of life imitating art. The show created a marketing gimmick that the real underworld adopted. Also on set, that meth was actually blue rock candy from a local candy shop in Albuquerque. The actors were constantly eating the props. Aaron Paul, who played Jesse, admitted he would snack on the drugs between takes because it was just sugar. Imagine the sugar rush on that set. Let's talk about the house. 308 Negra Arroyo Lane. If you type that into Google Maps, it might take you to a random spot because the address is fictional. The real house is located at 3828 Piermont Drive in Albuquerque. And this house has become a mecca for fans, which is actually a massive problem. The real owners of the house are a nice retired couple who have been living there since long before the show started. They had no idea their driveway would become one of the most famous locations in television history. And this brings us to the pizza. The pizza toss. It is legendary. In the Season 3 episode, Caballo Sin Nombre, Walt arrives at the house with a Dipping Sticks pizza to make peace with Skylar. She refuses to let him in. In a fit of rage, Walt takes the giant pizza box and flings it at the roof. The pizza slides out of the box and lands perfectly, I mean perfectly, flat on the roof of the garage. It is one of the funniest, most bizarre moments in the series. Here is the behind-the-scenes secret that makes it legendary. That was a one-take wonder. It was a miracle. The script just said, Walt throws the pizza onto the roof. The prop department had prepared a stack of rubber pizzas and rigged a device to pull a fake pizza onto the roof because they assumed it would be impossible to do practically. They also had a stack of real pizzas for multiple takes. Bryan Cranston picked up the first real pizza, a massive party-sized pepperoni. He didn't look at the roof, he just hurled it out of frustration, acting the scene. The pizza left his hand, spun in the air like a frisbee, and stuck the landing like a gymnast. Cranston didn't even see it land, he just heard the crew gasp. He got back in the car and drove off, but if you watch the unedited footage, you can see him do a double take because he couldn't believe it actually stayed up there. The crew erupted in applause. They never used the rubber pizzas. They never did a second take. It was flawless. But the story doesn't end there. Because the pizza landed so perfectly, and because the scene became an internet meme instantly, fans started visiting the real house on Piermont Drive. And what did they do? They started throwing pizzas on the poor lady's roof. It became such an epidemic that the show creator Vince Gilligan had to go on a podcast and tell fans to stop. He said, "I don't consider you a fan if you're throwing pizza on this lady's roof." They eventually had to put up a 6-foot iron fence around the property to stop people from tossing pepperonis at the shingles. It is crazy to think that a moment of improvisational perfection by an actor led to a real-world fencing contractor getting a job to protect a suburban home from flying Italian food. And speaking of the pizza, have you ever noticed it wasn't sliced? Who buys a pizza that isn't sliced? Fans pointed this out immediately. Plot hole, they screamed. Why is the pizza unsliced? The writers, realizing their mistake, because obviously a sliced pizza would have flown apart in the air, had to write a scene in a later episode explaining that this specific pizza place, Venezia's, sells their pizzas unsliced to pass the savings on to you. It was a genius retcon. They fixed a physics problem with a line of dialogue about economic efficiency. That is the level of writing we are dealing with here. They cover their tracks so well that even the mistakes become lore. The house itself is also a character. The long hallway where Walt looks down, the crawl space, oh god, the crawl space, and the pool. The pool is a constant symbol of chaos. Things are always falling into that pool. Debris from the plane crash, money, vomit, Walt himself. The pool represents the containment of the White family's pristine suburban life, and slowly, over 5 seasons, it becomes polluted. Just like Walt's soul. But going back to the pilot and the location, Albuquerque was never supposed to be the setting. The original script was set in Riverside, California. They were going to shoot in California. But New Mexico offered a massive tax rebate for film productions. It was purely a financial decision to move the show to Albuquerque. And thank goodness they did. Because the desert, the wide shots, the unique architecture of the Southwest, the Sandia Mountains turning pink at sunset, that visual identity became the heart of the show. If they had shot in Riverside, it would have looked like Weeds or any other suburban drama. The isolation of the New Mexico desert gave the show its Western vibe. It turned Walter White into a modern cowboy, an outlaw in a lawless land. It is a perfect example of how a budget constraint can lead to a creative masterpiece. The yellow filter they use for Mexico scenes versus the stark, bright light of New Mexico, it all stems from that tax credit. Let's dwell on the pilot episode a bit longer because the amount of effort Cranston put into that transformation is legendary. To play the pathetic version of Walter White, Cranston gained weight. He grew a pathetic mustache that he described as looking like a dead caterpillar. He wore clothes that were too big for him to make him look shrunken and defeated. He actually worked with the costume designer to pick colors that washed him out. He wanted to look like a man who had vanished into the beige background of his own life. The green shirt he wears in the pilot? It's not just green. It's a specific, sickly shade of green that suggests stagnation. Everything was calculated. And then there is the chemistry. The actual chemistry on set. Aaron Paul, who plays Jesse Pinkman, was almost killed off in Season 1. That is a fact that haunts many fans. The original plan was for Jesse to die in Episode 9 of the first season. He was supposed to be the gateway drug for Walt into the criminal world, and then get killed by a rival dealer, giving Walt the motivation to seek revenge. But the writer's strike of 2007 happened. The season was cut short to just 7 episodes. And during that hiatus, Vince Gilligan realized that the chemistry, pun intended, between Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul was lightning in a bottle. You couldn't teach that. You couldn't write that. It was magic. So, because of a writer's strike that paralyzed Hollywood, Jesse Pinkman survived. If the strike hadn't happened, we would have lost the heart and soul of the show. We would have lost Science Bitch. We would have lost the most tragic father-son relationship in TV history. It is insane to think that bureaucratic labor negotiations saved the co-star of the show. As we wrap up this first deep dive, think about the layers we have uncovered. The pants that traveled through time, the casting choice that almost gave us Ferris Bueller as a drug lord, the scientific inaccuracy that changed the real-world drug trade, the pizza that defied physics and terrorized a real homeowner, and the tax rebate that gave us the desert. Breaking Bad isn't just a story about a man turning evil. It is a story about how hundreds of tiny accidents, choices, and risks coalesced into something perfect. And we are just scratching the surface. We haven't even talked about the hat yet, or the pink teddy bear, or the fact that Tuco Salamanca was only supposed to be in a few episodes, but was so terrifying they kept him around. The rabbit hole goes so much deeper. So take a breath. Visualize that blue sky. Because in the next chapter, we are going to explore the secret language of the show, the colors. Did you know that every single character has a specific color palette that evolves as they break bad? And did you know that the color of their clothes predicts their deaths? It is a code that was hidden in plain sight for 5 years. Prepare to have your mind blown again. Welcome back to the desert. If you thought the saga of the flying pants and the rooftop pizza was deep, you are not ready for what we are about to uncover. We are diving into the matrix of Breaking Bad. We are going to talk about the secret code that was staring you in the face for 62 episodes. A code written not in binary, but in the visible spectrum of light. We are talking about color theory. Vince Gilligan and his team didn't just pick clothes because they looked nice. They weaponized the color wheel to tell a subconscious story that your brain picked up on even if you didn't realize it. This is the kind of detail that makes you want to rewatch the entire series immediately just to stare at the curtains in the background. It is obsessive, it is insane, and it is absolute genius. Let's start with the names themselves. Have you ever paused to think about the surnames of the main characters? It is the most obvious clue that is also the easiest to miss. Walter White, Jesse Pinkman, Elliot Schwartz. In German, Schwartz means black. So, the company that Walt co-founded and then walked away from, the company that represents his lost potential, his ego, and his greatest regret, is called gray matter. White plus black equals gray. It is a literal representation of the mixture of Walt's potential and Elliot's execution. It is the blending of good and evil. And then you have Jesse Pinkman. Pink is a shade of red, often associated with innocence or raw emotion, but in this context, it represents the lighter, softer version of the harsh red criminal world. Jesse is the pink that eventually gets stained by the darkness of Walt's world. It is a linguistic color game played right from the pilot script, but the visual game is where things get truly legendary. Let's talk about Marie Schrader. If you have eyes, you know Marie loves purple, but loves is an understatement. She is obsessed. She is the purple queen. Her clothes are purple, her rug is purple, her kitchen appliances are purple, her tea kettle is purple. Even the items she steals during her kleptomania episodes are often purple. Why? Is it just a quirk? No. In color psychology, purple is often associated with royalty, nobility, and wisdom, but it can also represent protection and, crucially, self-deception. Marie is a character who lives in a bubble of denial. She denies her sister's problems, she denies her husband's trauma at first, and she denies her own kleptomania. The purple is her shield. It is a safe, artificial color that doesn't occur often in the harsh desert nature. By surrounding herself with purple, she is insulating herself from the gritty, beige reality of Albuquerque and the meth trade. But here is the mind-blowing fact that will make you gasp. Pay attention to the very few times Marie does not wear purple. It is a warning signal. In Season 1, when she goes to the baby shower and feels the immense pressure and jealousy of Skylar's pregnancy, she wears a yellow top. Yellow, in Breaking Bad, is the color of danger, caution, and meth. Think of the hazmat suits. Later in the series, when Hank is in the hospital and Marie is stripped of her defenses, she starts wearing black. The purple fades away as reality crashes into her life. When she is safe again, the purple returns. It is a barometer of her mental state. If Marie is wearing purple, she is deluding herself. If she isn't, run, because something real and terrible is happening. Now, look at Walter White's wardrobe. In the pilot, everything is beige, khaki, and pale green. He is invisible. He blends into the desert sand and the high school walls. He is a non-entity. As he breaks bad, his colors shift dramatically. He starts wearing darker greens, representing greed and money. Then he shifts to blacks, representing the Heisenberg persona, the void of morality. But the most genius detail is the Ozymandias callback. In the final season, specifically in the episodes leading up to his exile in New Hampshire, Walt returns to that beige khaki look. Why? Because he has lost his power. He is no longer the dark kingpin. He is just a dying man in the desert again. The costume designer, Kathleen DeToro, created a specific color timeline for Walt that goes from sand to green to black and back to sand. It is a visual palindrome, mirroring the rise and fall of his empire. And let's not forget the underwear, the tighty-whities. They represent his vulnerability. Every time Walt is stripped down to his white underwear, in the pilot in the desert, or later in the supermarket fugue state, it is a moment of pure, raw exposure. The white in his name is the blank canvas that gets painted over with blood and meth. But the underwear remains a symbol of the pathetic, fragile man underneath the pork pie hat. Speaking of that hat, the pork pie hat. It is arguably the most iconic accessory in television history. But did you know that Bryan Cranston didn't choose it for the style? He chose it for survival. Cranston had shaved his head for the role, and the New Mexico sun is brutal. He was getting sunburned on his scalp. He asked the costume department for a hat, just to keep the sun off his head between takes. They tried baseball caps, cowboy hats, beanies. Nothing looked right. Then they tried the pork pie. It had a weird, jazzy, distinct silhouette. When Cranston put it on and looked in the mirror, his posture changed. He tilted his head. He squinted. Heisenberg was born in that moment. The shadow that hat casts over his eyes makes him look menacing, hiding his expressions. It became his superhero cape, or rather his supervillain cape. Without that practical need for sun protection, we might never have had the silhouette that adorns t-shirts and murals all over the world. It is another example of a practical problem on set, leading to an iconic creative decision. Let's shift to the most tragic color foreshadowing in the entire series, Jane Margolis. Jane is associated with the color black, fitting her goth tattoo artist vibe. But look at the mural in her bedroom. Have you ever paused the episode Albuquerque or looked closely at the background in Season 2? Painted on the wall above her bed is a surreal image of a woman floating in space, surrounded by pink items and debris. It looks eerily peaceful. Now, flash forward to the plane crash, the Wayfarer 515 disaster. What happens? Jane dies choked on her own vomit, a scene we will dissect in agonizing detail later, and her death causes her father to malfunction at work, causing the planes to collide. The debris rains down on Albuquerque. The image of the debris falling through the sky perfectly matches the mural in her room. It is as if she painted her own destiny on her wall. It is a mind-blowing Easter egg that suggests the universe of the show is trapped in a fatalistic loop. And connected to this is the legendary pink teddy bear. The pink teddy bear is the mascot of chaos in Breaking Bad. We see it in the flash-forwards of Season 2, floating in the pool, missing an eye, half-burnt. It is a gruesome image. The pink color represents the innocence of the children, like the little girl in the plane, or even Kaylee Ehrmantraut or Brock, that gets destroyed by Walt's actions. But here is the crazy theory that turned out to be true. Look at the damage to the bear. It is scorched on one side. The eye is popped out. Now, think about the Season 4 finale. Face Off. Think about Gustavo Fring walking out of that hospital room after the explosion. He adjusts his tie. The camera pans around. Half of his face is blown off. It is a skull. The damage to Gus Fring's face perfectly matches the damage to the pink teddy bear from 2 seasons prior. The show was telling us how the villain would die 2 years before it happened. That is long-term storytelling on a level that is almost scary. Vince Gilligan has admitted that they didn't know exactly how Gus would die when they introduced the bear, but the visual symmetry is undeniable. It creates a subconscious link. The chaos Walt creates, the plane crash bear, eventually consumes his greatest enemy, Gus. And remember the eye? Walt keeps the plastic eyeball from the bear. He finds it in the pool filter. He keeps it in a drawer. Why? It's the eye of God. It's the universe watching him. Every time he opens that drawer, that unblinking plastic eye is staring at him, judging him. It is a symbol of the guilt he pretends not to feel. We also need to talk about the color yellow. Yellow is huge. It represents the business of meth, but specifically the danger of it. The hazmat suits are yellow. The Los Polos Hermanos branding is yellow and red. But there is a specific scene involving the character Crazy 8 in the first season that connects to the habit absorption theory. This is a theory that suggests Walter White picks up the traits of the people he kills. It is creepy, and the evidence is strong. When Walt kills Crazy 8, his first direct kill, Crazy 8 has a habit of cutting the crusts off his sandwiches. Later in the series, we see Walt cutting the crusts off his sandwiches. He adopts the victim's preference. When Walt kills Mike Ehrmantraut, he starts drinking his drinks on the rocks, just like Mike did. When he kills Gus Fring, he starts exhibiting some of Gus's calculated, meticulous mannerisms. It is as if he is consuming their souls, adding their strength to his own, like a video game character leveling up. But back to yellow. The plate that Crazy 8 uses, the broken piece of plate that becomes the weapon, It is a yellow plate. The decision to kill Crazy 8 is the moment Walt steps onto the yellow brick road of the drug trade. He can never go back to Kansas after that. Let's not forget the color blue. We talked about the meth, but look at Skylar White. In the early seasons, Skylar is almost always dressed in blue. Blue represents loyalty, coldness, sadness, and stability. She is the blue sky of Walt's domestic life. As she gets dragged into the criminal enterprise, her colors get darker, more muted. She starts wearing grays and blacks. But there is a specific shade of blue, the blue of the swimming pool. The pool is the central organ of the White household. It is a glowing blue eye in the backyard. The water represents the fluidity of their morals. Notice how the pool light is often on at night, casting an eerie blue glow on the characters. It creates a visual link between the home and the blue meth. The meth pays for the home is bathed in the color of the meth. The cinematography often shoots Walt through the blue water, or with the blue reflection on his face, visually branding him as a product of his own creation. He is drowning in it long before he actually falls. And what about the chaotic, frantic energy of the camera work itself? This isn't just about what they wear, but how we see them. Breaking Bad is famous for its POV, point-of-view shots. We see the world from the perspective of the weirdest objects. We get a shot from inside a shovel looking up at Walt and Jesse digging a grave. We get a shot from inside a dryer tumbling around with money. We get a shot from inside a Roomba vacuum cleaner moving across the floor during a party. We get a shot from inside a pool skimmer. Why? Why go to the trouble of building special camera rigs to film from the perspective of a shovel? It creates a sense of immersion and claustrophobia. It makes the inanimate objects of the world feel like witnesses. The shovel knows what Walt did. The dryer knows where the money came from. It reinforces the idea that there are no secrets. The world is watching. It also adds a layer of kinetic energy and dark humor. Seeing Jesse's terrified face from the bottom of a plastic tub while he tries to dissolve a body is horrific, but the angle makes it strangely absurd and engaging. It breaks the fourth wall without actually breaking it. It says, look at this mess from every possible angle. One final color curiosity that connects the Breaking Bad universe to the real world in a hilarious way: the unexpected prominence of the color orange. Hank Schrader, the DEA agent, is often surrounded by orange. The DEA offices have orange hues. His shirts are often rusty or orange. Orange is the complementary color to blue on the color wheel. They are opposites. Hank is the direct opposite of the blue meth. He is the force trying to extinguish it. The visual language creates a conflict between orange, law, and blue, crime, that plays out in almost every frame where Hank and Walt share the screen. It is subtle, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It is fire and ice, the chaotic heat of the hunt versus the cold, calculated chemistry of the cook. As we close the book on the visual spectrum of the show, you have to appreciate the level of control Vince Gilligan exerted. He wasn't just filming a script, he was painting a masterpiece where every brushstroke meant something. The colors told us who was lying, who was dying, and who was in charge, often before the characters opened their mouths. But visuals are only one part of the equation. What about the actual science? The chemistry? The explosions? In the next chapter, we are going to put on our safety goggles and enter the lab. We are going to explore the science versus fiction of Breaking Bad. We will talk about why the bathtub scene is chemically impossible, thank God, why fulminated mercury doesn't work quite like that, and the time the show actually taught people how to make a battery in the desert, which is scientifically sound. Get ready to channel your inner Jesse Pinkman, because we are about to scream, "Science, bitch." Here we are, standing in the middle of the desert in our underwear, metaphorically speaking, ready to cook. If the colors were the soul of the show, the science is its skeleton. Breaking Bad didn't just use science as a backdrop. It made chemistry a main character. It made the periodic table cool. It made "Science, bitch" a global catchphrase. But here's the burning question that keeps fans awake at night. How much of it was real and how much was pure Hollywood magic? We are about to dissolve the myths with the same precision as a barrel of hydrofluoric acid. Speaking of which, let's address the elephant, or rather the bathtub, in the room. The Cats in the Bag episode. Season 1, Episode 2. It is the moment the show went from quirky dramedy to visceral horror. Walt tells Jesse to buy a specific plastic bin made of polyethylene to dissolve the body of Emilio. Jesse, being Jesse, ignores the advice and dumps the body and the acid into his upstairs bathtub. A few hours later, crash. The ceiling dissolves, and a slurry of red, meaty soup and broken porcelain rains down into the hallway. It is disgusting. It is iconic. But is it real? Here's the science versus fiction breakdown that will ruin your appetite. Hydrofluoric acid, HF, is terrifying stuff. It is indeed a weak acid chemically, but it is highly corrosive to biological tissue. It loves calcium. It will eat your bones from the inside out. However, the show exaggerated its superpowers against inanimate objects. In reality, while HF can etch glass and attack ceramics, which is why the bathtub dissolved, it wouldn't eat through the wooden floor joists and the drywall that quickly or that dramatically. It takes a long time. The Mythbusters actually tested this. Yes, there was a Breaking Bad Mythbusters special, which proves the show's cultural impact. They built a replica bathroom, put a pig carcass in a tub, and poured gallons of acid on it. The result? It made a mess, but it didn't melt the floor. The pig didn't turn into liquid goo that fast. So, while the principle was scientifically sound, plastic resists acid, ceramic doesn't. The result was turned up to 11 for dramatic effect. But the scariest part? The writers actually consulted chemists to find an acid that wouldn't work as well as Walt said, because they didn't want to give a how-to guide to real-world criminals on how to dispose of bodies. They purposely tweaked the science to be responsible. That is a level of social responsibility you don't see often in crime dramas. They wanted to gross you out, not teach you a trade skill. Now, let's talk about the single most badass moment in Walter White's early career, the Tuco Salamanca explosion. This is not meth. Walt walks into Tuco's headquarters, a bag of crystals in hand. He demands his money. Tuco laughs. Walt picks up a single crystal and throws it. Boom! The windows blow out, the air conditioner falls from the ceiling, and everyone is knocked off their feet. Walt stands there, surrounded by smoke, holding the bag of fulminated mercury. It is legendary. It is the moment Heisenberg is truly born. But here is the insane reality check. Fulminated mercury is a real explosive. It is a primary explosive used in primers for bullets. It is incredibly unstable. If Walt had actually walked in there with a bag that size, basically a pound of high explosives, the friction of the crystals rubbing together in the bag as he walked would have likely set it off. He would have been a pink mist before he even got to Tuco's office. And if by some miracle he survived the walk, throwing that single crystal to create an explosion that size? Possible. But the shockwave from that blast in such a small, enclosed room would have killed everyone inside, including Walt. His eardrums would have shattered, his internal organs would have been pulverized. The show allows him to walk away with a bloody nose and a cool line. In reality, it would have been a suicide mission. Also, real fulminated mercury looks like gray powder or small brown crystals, not the big, beautiful, clear, meth-like shards we see in the show. The prop department made those shards out of plaster and painted them to look cool. It is a classic case of the rule of cool winning over the laws of physics. But we forgive it because seeing Bryan Cranston stare down a drug lord while holding a chemical grenade is cinematic gold. Let's shift to something that was surprisingly accurate. The thermite scene. Season 1 again. Walt and Jesse need to steal a barrel of methylamine from a chemical warehouse. They can't pick the lock. So Walt whips up some thermite using the insides of an etch-a-sketch, aluminum powder, and rust, iron oxide. He ignites it and it burns through the heavy steel lock like a hot knife through butter. Is this real? 100% yes. Thermite is not an explosive, it is an incendiary. It burns at roughly 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It is hotter than magma. It is used to weld railroad tracks together. The chemistry Walt explains, mixing a metal powder with a metal oxide, is textbook perfection. The writers got this spot on. The fact that you can make it from everyday items is the terrifying part. It showed Walt's resourcefulness perfectly. He didn't need a gun, he needed a toy and some rust. This scene established Walt as a MacGyver of death. It wasn't about brute force, it was about applying knowledge in a criminal context. The visual of the sparks showering down and the lock melting into glowing liquid slag is one of the most satisfying practical effects in the series. Then we have the battery episode, 4 Days Out. This is a fan favorite. Walt and Jesse are stranded in the desert. The RV battery is dead. They have no water. They are dying. Walt, in a delirium of dehydration, constructs a galvanic cell battery using coins, galvanized metal, zinc, brake pads, graphite, and sponges soaked in potassium hydroxide. He chains them together to jumpstart the RV. Does it work? The science is sound. It is a classic electrochemical cell. You learn this in high school chemistry. However, the scale is the issue. Mythbusters tested this too. They built the exact same battery. They found that while it did produce electricity, it didn't produce nearly enough amperage to crank a massive RV engine. You would need hundreds, maybe thousands of those little sponge cells to get the cold cranking amps required to turn over a starter motor. So, while the theory is perfect, the engineering is a stretch. But the emotional truth of that scene, Walt using his brain to save them from his own hubris, is what matters. And the moment Jesse lights up and says wire instead of copper, leading to the disappointment of element wire, is one of the funniest character beats in the show. It highlights the gap between Walt's academic genius and Jesse's street-level ignorance, a gap that slowly closes as Jesse becomes a better cook. Speaking of Jesse becoming a better cook, let's talk about the purity myth. 99.1%. That is the number. The legendary purity of the blue sky meth. In the world of Breaking Bad, this purity is what makes the product the bomb. It's why Gus Fring needs Walt. It's why the cartel needs Walt. But in the real world of pharmacology, the difference between 96% pure meth, which Gail Buetiker could make, and 99% pure meth, Walt's product, would be negligible to the user. A meth head on the street wouldn't be able to tell the difference in the high. The show treats purity like it's fine wine, where the subtle notes matter. In reality, once you are past 90%, it's all just getting you high. The obsession with that final 3% is purely a measure of Walt's ego. It represents his perfectionism, not necessarily a market necessity. The cartel wouldn't really care about that 3% margin as much as they do in the show. But narratively, it works because it elevates meth cooking to an art form. It makes Walt an artist rather than just a cook. It makes him irreplaceable. If anyone could cook 96% and that was good enough, Walt would have been killed in Season 3. The lie of the superiority of the 99% is the plot armor that keeps Walter White alive. Now let's look at the poisons. The ricin, the Chekhov's gun of the series. We see the ricin vial in the very first episode. It teases us for 5 seasons. Ricin is real, and it is deadly. It is derived from the castor bean plant. The show depicts it as a white powder. In reality, making pharmaceutical-grade, lethal ricin powder in a home lab is incredibly difficult and dangerous. The mash is easy to make, but extracting the pure toxin without killing yourself is a nightmare. But the show handles the threat of ricin perfectly. It's the silent killer. However, the biggest twist involving poison didn't use ricin at all. It used lily of the valley. When Brock, the little boy, gets sick, everyone, including the audience and Jesse, assumes it's the ricin. We all thought Walt had crossed the ultimate line. Well, he did, just not with ricin. The reveal that it was the potted plant in Walt's backyard is a masterstroke of botanical warfare. Lily of the Valley contains cardiac glycosides, which mimic a heart attack or severe flu. It is common, pretty, and deadly. Walt didn't need a super lab to hurt Brock. He just needed a garden. This shift from high-tech chemistry to simple gardening shows Walt's devolution. He stops being the scientist and starts being the predator, using whatever is at hand. The shot of the plant at the end of Season 4 is one of the most chilling reveals in TV history because it confirms that Walt is a monster who will poison a child to manipulate a business partner. And we cannot forget the magnets. Yeah, bitch. Magnets. Season 5 premiere. Walt and Jesse need to destroy a laptop locked in an evidence room at the police station. They use a massive junkyard electromagnet mounted in a truck. They crank it up, and it wipes the laptop and destroys the room, pulling guns and evidence against the wall. Is this physics or fantasy? It is a bit of both. A magnet that size could wipe a hard drive. That is fact. However, the magnetic field required to pull metal objects across a room through a reinforced concrete wall would have to be astronomically high. We are talking MRI levels of power, or more. And the way the magnet tips the truck over? That is questionable physics. But the most hidden detail here is that the laptop was encrypted. The police likely couldn't have opened it anyway. Walt destroyed the evidence room and caused massive suspicion for nothing. It was his paranoia driving the science. He used a sledgehammer to crack a nut that was already glued shut. It highlights how his genius often causes more problems than it solves. One blink and you'll miss it. Science fact that is absolutely hilarious involves the pizza toss again, but from a physics perspective. Fans have calculated the angular momentum required to keep that pizza flat. There are actual Reddit threads with equations. But let's look at the fly in the lab. The episode, Fly. Bottle episode, controversial. Some hate it, some love it. Walt is obsessed with a single housefly contaminating the lab. He claims the fly will ruin the batch. Is he right? Technically, maybe. In a pharmaceutical clean room, a contaminant like a fly could introduce bacteria or foreign matter. But for a meth lab? Even a super lab? No. A single fly would not statistically impact the purity of a 200-pound batch of methamphetamine. Walt's obsession wasn't scientific. It was psychological. The fly represented his guilt. It was the contamination of his soul. Jane's death, the lies to Skylar. He was projecting his internal rot onto an external insect. The science was just the excuse he used to have a breakdown. It is a perfect example of how the show uses scientific language to mask emotional turmoil. Let's also touch on the blue meth manufacturing process again, specifically the P2P cook. In the beginning, Walt uses pseudoephedrine from cold medicine. This is the classic meth recipe. It relies on a specific precursor. When they switch to the P2P, phenyl-2-propanone method using methylamine, the chemistry changes. The P2P method actually produces a racemic mixture, 50% D-methamphetamine, the stuff that gets you high, and 50% L-methamphetamine, which is basically a decongestant and makes your heart race but gives no euphoria. This means the P2P meth would actually be weaker than the pseudo-meth unless Walt performed a specific chiral resolution step to remove the bad stuff. The show glosses over this step. They mention it briefly, but they don't show the massive complexity of separating the molecules. If they hadn't glossed over it, half the episodes would be Walt waiting for crystals to separate. It is a necessary narrative shortcut, but for the chemistry nerds, it is a fun little gotcha. Walt's P2P meth being 99.1% pure means he is the greatest chemist who ever lived, performing industrial-scale chiral resolution in a basement. It is effectively magic. As we strip off our hazmat suits and leave the lab, we realize that the science of Breaking Bad isn't just about formulas. It is about consequences. Every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. Walt acts and the world reacts. The fulminated mercury leads to Tuco's death, which leads to the cousins, which leads to Hank's shooting. It is a chemical chain reaction of tragedy. But speaking of tragedy, and speaking of the people caught in the blast radius, we need to talk about the victims. Not the drug dealers, but the family. In the next chapter, we are going to drive back to the suburbs. We are going to dissect the most hated character in television history, who actually did nothing wrong. We are going to talk about Skylar White. We will explore the Skylar problem, the misogyny of the fan base, the genius of Anna Gunn's performance, and the hidden details in the White household that prove she was a prisoner in her own home. Get ready for an uncomfortable but necessary look at the woman who stood in Heisenberg's shadow. We are pulling into the driveway of 308 Negra Arroyo Lane, and the garage door is opening. But we aren't here for the meth. We are here for the marriage. We are here to talk about the most polarizing figure in the entire Breaking Bad universe. She isn't a drug lord. She isn't a hitman. She is a mother, a writer, and a bookkeeper. We are talking about Skylar White. If you watched the show while it was airing, you probably remember the vitriol, the I Hate Skylar White Facebook pages, the death threats sent to actress Anna Gunn. It was a cultural phenomenon of pure, unadulterated rage directed at a woman who, on paper, was the only rational person in the room. Why? Because she was the obstacle. In the video game of Walter White's life, she was the game over screen. She was the buzzkill. But looking back now, years later, with the hype settled, we have to admit something uncomfortable. Skylar White was right about everything. And Anna Gunn gave a performance that was arguably more difficult than Bryan Cranston's because she had to play the antagonist to the protagonist we loved, while secretly being the hero we needed. It is time to unpack the Skylar paradox. Let's start with the happy birthday scene. You know the one. Season 2, Ted Benecke's office. Skylar, heavily pregnant, sings a breathy, Marilyn Monroe-style Happy Birthday, Mr. President to her boss. It is universally regarded as the most cringe moment in the series. Fans skip it. They mute the TV. It makes your skin crawl. But here is the genius secret behind that scene. It was supposed to make you hate it. It wasn't bad writing. It was character assassination by design. At this point in the story, Skylar feels alienated from Walt. Walt is distant, lying, and dangerous. Ted represents safety. Ted is boring. Ted is heated floors and corporate fraud, not murder and meth. That scene is Skylar desperately trying to roleplay a different life, a life where she is the seductress of a normal businessman. The cringe comes from the fact that it is so forced. She is trying to convince herself she wants Ted, just to escape the vacuum of her marriage. The writers wanted you to feel that discomfort. They wanted you to see that Skylar was flailing. And the fact that it made everyone so uncomfortable proves how effective it was. It wasn't sexy. It was sad. Now look at the smoking. Skylar's smoking habit is a brilliant narrative device. In the pilot, she is militantly health conscious. She sells items on eBay for extra cash. She writes short stories. She pesters Walt about the veggie bacon. She is the picture of suburban control. When she starts smoking while pregnant, it is the first visual crack in the facade. It is shocking. Seeing a pregnant woman smoke is a taboo image that immediately turns the audience against her. But visually, it represents her loss of control. She can't control her husband, she can't control her finances, so she controls the one thing she can, destroying her own health and potentially the baby's. It is a silent scream for help. And have you noticed where she smokes? It is almost always in the dark, or outside, or hidden. It is her secret Breaking Bad moment. While Walt is cooking meth, Skylar is cooking her lungs. It is a parallel descent into self-destruction. Then there is the shut up scene. The dinner with Hank and Marie. Skylar has reached her breaking point. Marie is talking about the kleptomania therapy. Hank is being Hank, and Skylar just snaps. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. She screams it over and over again. It is terrifying. Anna Gunn performed that scene with such raw intensity that the cast was genuinely unsettled. It wasn't just anger, it was the sound of a woman who was holding up the weight of the entire world, realizing she couldn't do it anymore. That moment is the psychological climax of her character. It is when she stops being the victim and starts becoming the accomplice just to survive. She realizes that silence, shutting up, is what got her there, and ironically, screaming "shut up" is her only release. It is a masterpiece of acting that often gets overshadowed by Walt's monologues. Speaking of monologues, we have to deconstruct "I am the one who knocks." This is the line that is on every t-shirt. It is Walt's ultimate power flex. But go back and watch that scene again. Look at Skylar's face. She isn't impressed. She is horrified. She is looking at a stranger. The tragedy of that scene isn't that Walt is a badass. It's that he thinks he is. And he is using that delusion to terrorize his wife. Skylar's reaction, quiet terror, is the anchor of reality. Without her reacting with fear, Walt is just a cartoon villain. She grounds him. She reminds the audience that this isn't cool, it's abusive. And later in the final season, she flips the script. When she sees the pile of money in the storage unit, that massive uncounted cube of cash, she asks him, "How much is enough?" That line kills Heisenberg. It pierces the ego. She reduces his empire to a logistics problem. She takes the mystique out of the meth and turns it into a storage issue. That is Skylar's superpower. She drags Walt back to reality. We also need to talk about the phone call in Ozymandias. This is widely considered one of the greatest scenes in television history. Walt has kidnapped baby Holly. He calls the house. Skylar answers with the police listening in. Walt starts screaming at her, calling her a bitch, saying she never supported him, saying she's a stupid woman. It is vicious. It confirms every hateful thing the fans felt about her. But look at Skylar's eyes. She realizes mid-call what Walt is doing. He knows the cops are listening. He is putting on a performance. He is taking all the blame. He is painting her as the victim and himself as the monster to save her from prosecution. He is giving her an out. It is a final twisted act of love. Skylar plays along, her breathing shifting from panic to realization. The chemistry between Cranston and Gunn in that scene, mostly done with just voices and reaction shots, is devastating. It redeems their entire relationship in one phone call. He destroys her reputation to save her freedom. It is the most heartbreaking "I love you" ever spoken, hidden inside a stream of abuse. Let's shift focus to the innocent bystander in this house of horrors, Walter White Jr., or Flynn, the kid who just wanted breakfast. The internet turned him into a meme. Walt Jr. loves breakfast. It's funny, but it's also tragic. Why does the camera focus so much on him eating cereal? Because breakfast is the only time the family is together. It is the symbol of the stability he craves. When the breakfast table is empty, or when they are eating silent dinners, the family is dead. Walt Jr. clings to the routine because everything else is falling apart. And let's give massive credit to RJ Midday. RJ actually has cerebral palsy in real life, just like the character. However, his case is milder than Walt Jr.'s. He actually had to learn how to walk with crutches more awkwardly than he naturally does to fit the role. He had to act more disabled than he was. That is dedication. He is also the moral compass of the show. He is the only character who never breaks bad. He remains pure. When he finds out the truth, he doesn't admire his dad. He calls the cops on him. He defends his mom. The scene in Ozymandias where he tackles Walt to protect Skylar is the moment the Heisenberg myth shatters for good. Walt can scare Tuco, he can kill Gus, but he can't fight his own disabled son. It is the ultimate defeat. And what about the house itself? The layout of the White residence is a character. That long hallway leading to the bedrooms. The cinematographers used it like a Western showdown lane. How many times did we see Walt and Skylar standing at opposite ends of that hallway? It represents the distance between them, and the water heater. The water heater in the utility closet is a constant source of annoyance. Walt fixes it, then he replaces it. Then he obsesses over the rot in the floorboards. This is a metaphor for the rot in the foundation of their marriage. Walt thinks he can fix the rot with money, a new tankless water heater, but the rot is structural. It is in the wood. You can't fix a moral failing with home improvement. The house is slowly rejecting them. By the end, the house is fenced off, vandalized, and empty. The American dream home became a crime scene. Here is a detail that will break your heart. Baby Holly. In the bathroom scene in Ozymandias, where Skylar and Walt are fighting over the knife, the baby is crying. When Walt takes Holly and leaves, there is a moment where the baby looks at Skylar. In one take, the actual baby used in the scene started crying and said, "Mama." It wasn't scripted. The baby just reacted to the tension and Anna Gunn's distress. Bryan Cranston, being a master, didn't break character. He kept going, but the look on his face, the pain of dragging a baby away from her mother who is screaming for her, became so much more real. Vince Gilligan kept it in. It adds a layer of visceral reality that you can't fake. That baby felt the bad vibes. Let's not forget the white lie of the car wash, the A1&A car wash. Have an A1 day. Skylar buying the car wash is the moment she officially enters the game. But look at the logic. She buys the place where Walt was humiliated, the place where he scrubbed tires for his students. She buys it to restore his dignity, but she puts him in the back office. She becomes the boss. It is a power play. And the way she manipulates the owner, Bogdan, is pure Heisenberg. She uses the environmental audit scam. She lies with a straight face. She shuts down the business with a fake story. This proved that Skylar had the potential to be just as cunning as Walt. The quickened scene where she plays the stupid accountant to the IRS auditor is comedic gold, but it shows her weaponizing the very sexism that fans used against her. She uses the dumb, blonde, clueless mom stereotype to get Ted out of tax fraud trouble. She plays 4D chess while everyone thinks she is just nagging. There is a wild what-if theory that circulated for a while. What if Skylar wrote Breaking Bad? We know she is a short story writer. We see her trying to write in the pilot. The theory goes that the entire series is her exaggerated memoir, written years later to capitalize on the fame of her husband. It explains why Walt is so cool and badass in the beginning. It's how she imagined him based on the news. It explains the dramatic flourishes. Obviously, this isn't canon, but it's a fun meta-narrative. It gives agency to the storyteller. But the reality is even darker. Skylar is the only one left to tell the story. She is the one who has to live in the wreckage. Walt dies. Jesse escapes. Skylar stays. She has to explain to Holly who her father was. She has to live in that town. Her prison is the rest of her life. The Skylar problem wasn't a problem with the character. It was a problem with us. We wanted to be the bad guy. We wanted the fantasy. Skylar was the reality check we didn't want. She was the designated driver at a party where everyone wanted to get drunk on power. And because she took the keys away, we boot her. But looking back, without Skylar White, Walter White is just a psycho in a desert. She gave the monster scale. She gave the tragedy weight. And Anna Gunn deserved every single award she won for enduring the hatred of millions while delivering a performance that held the entire emotional core of the show together. As we leave the domestic battlefield of the White household, we need to turn our attention to the other side of the coin. The son Walt chose over his own. The heart of the show. The man who suffered more than anyone. We are talking about Jesse Pinkman. In the next chapter, we are going to explore the tragic arc of Captain Cook. We will discuss the torture, the guilt, the box, and the surprising fact that Aaron Paul was never supposed to make it past season 1. We will look at how the writers tortured this character to the brink of insanity and why we loved him for it. Get ready to cry, because Jesse's story is the open wound of Breaking Bad. Close your eyes and picture a wooden box. It is a small box, maybe made of Peruvian walnut or cedar. It is polished to a mirror shine. It smells like lemon oil and hard work. It is perfect. This box doesn't exist in the timeline of the meth empire. It exists in the memory of a young man sitting in a circle of folding chairs in a rehab center, pouring his heart out to strangers. This is the tragedy of Jesse Pinkman. We are shifting our gaze now to the soul of Breaking Bad. If Walter White is the brain, cold and calculating, Jesse Pinkman is the beating, bleeding heart. He is the character who felt every single consequence that Walt ignored. He is the Cap'n Cook who learned that the kitchen was actually a slaughterhouse. And the most mind-blowing fact about Jesse isn't about the meth he cooked or the money he made. It is the fact that he is a ghost who wasn't supposed to be there. As we mentioned briefly before, Jesse Pinkman was scheduled for execution in the writer's room. Season 1, Episode 9. That was his expiration date. He was a plot device, a disposable junkie meant to die to give Walt a reason to break even worse. But the universe intervened. The 2007 Writers Guild strike saved his life. And thank the TV gods for that strike, because without Aaron Paul, Breaking Bad would have been a hollow shell of technical brilliance without emotional devastation. Aaron Paul's performance is what happens when an actor doesn't just play a role, but allows the role to consume him. He has admitted in interviews that playing Jesse was dark. He would go home to a dark apartment in Albuquerque, often in the dangerous parts of town to stay in character, and just sit in the heavy emotion of a kid who is losing his mind. He wasn't a trained actor in the classical sense. He was an instinctual force of nature. Look at the way he wears his clothes. In the early seasons, everything is 5 sizes too big. The hoodies, the jeans that defy gravity. It was a costume choice that screamed imposter. Jesse was a suburban kid from a nice family trying to play the role of a hard gangster. He was hiding inside those clothes. As the series progresses and he is stripped of his illusions, the clothes get tighter, darker, more practical. He stops playing a character and becomes a survivor. But he never stops calling him Mr. White. Have you ever realized how heartbreaking that is? Even when he is holding a gun to Walt's head, even when he knows Walt poisoned a child, even when he knows Walt watched his girlfriend die, he calls him Mr. White. It is the eternal student-teacher dynamic. It is a sign of respect that Walt never earned and never reciprocated. It shows that deep down, Jesse is still just a kid looking for a father figure, and he found the worst father in the world. Let's talk about the suffering. Oh, the suffering. Jesse Pinkman is the job of the Breaking Bad Bible. The writers seemed to have a contest to see how much physical and psychological torture they could inflict on this young man. He falls into a porta potty full of blue excrement. He gets beaten to a pulp by Tuco. He gets beaten by Hank Schrader until his face is a swollen melon. He gets his money stolen. His RV is crushed. But the physical pain is nothing compared to the emotional scars. The death of Jane Margulis is the turning point that destroyed Jesse's soul. The episode Phoenix is hard to watch. Walt stands over the bed. Jane starts to choke. Walt instinctively reaches out to help, then stops. He watches. He calculates. He lets her die to save his own ass and to save Jesse from heroin. When Jesse wakes up next to her cold body, the scream he lets out is primal. Aaron Paul wasn't acting there. He was channeling pure terror. And the aftermath? The voicemail. There is a detail that fans often miss or forget. After Jane dies, Jesse keeps calling her phone just to hear her voicemail greeting. Yo, if I don't know you, I don't know you. Leave a message. He listens to it over and over again until the service is finally disconnected. It is a moment of quiet, pathetic grief that hits harder than any explosion. It is the moment we realize that Jesse feels things too deeply to survive in this business. And then comes the Peekaboo episode. This is the episode that proved Jesse was the moral center of the show. He goes to collect money from a pair of junkies. He finds a neglected, dirty little boy in the house. The way Jesse interacts with that kid, playing peekaboo, making him a sandwich, protecting him from the horrors of his parents, is beautiful. It establishes that Jesse has a soft spot for children. He sees himself in them, innocent and abandoned. This trait becomes his fatal flaw. It is why he unravels over the death of Tomas, the kid on the bike. It is why he almost burns Walt's house down over Brock. Walt knows this. Walt weaponizes Jesse's love for children against him. The manipulation involving the ricin cigarette and the lily of the valley is the cruelest trick ever played. Walt gaslights Jesse into believing he lost the cigarette, making Jesse feel guilty for almost killing Walt, when in reality, Walt poisoned Brock just to get Jesse back on his side. When Jesse finally puts the pieces together in Season 5, the "Who'll took my dope" realization, the explosion of rage is terrifying. It is the rage of a man who realizes his entire reality has been curated by a sociopath. Let's discuss the problem dog speech in the support group. This is arguably Aaron Paul's monologue masterpiece. He confesses to killing a dog, Gail Boetticher. He talks about how he put the dog down. The group leader tries to offer him forgiveness, saying self-acceptance is a big step. And Jesse snaps. If you just do stuff and nothing happens, what's it all mean? What's the point? He rejects the cheap forgiveness. He wants to be punished. He knows he did something unforgivable. Shooting Gail wasn't just a murder, it was the murder of Jesse's innocence. Look at his face when he pulls the trigger in the Season 3 finale. He is crying. His hand is shaking uncontrollably. He doesn't want to do it. He does it to save Mr. White. He sacrifices his soul for the man who will eventually betray him. The camera movement in that scene, pushing in on the gun barrel, is iconic, but the real story is in Jesse's tear-filled eyes. He knows that once he pulls that trigger, he can never go back to being the kid who drew stupid cartoons. He is a killer now. And then the box. The cage. Season 5, Part 2. This is the darkest timeline. Jesse is enslaved by Jack's Nazi gang. He is kept in a concrete pit. He is chained to a track in the lab. He is forced to cook the blue meth to perfection, or they will kill Andrea and Brock. The makeup department did horrifying work here. The scars on Jesse's face, the dead look in his eyes, the shaggy hair. He looks like a feral animal. The psychological torture of the ice cream scene is nauseating. Todd, the sociopathic nephew of Jack, brings Jesse some ice cream as a treat for a good cook. Jesse is sitting in his cage, eating ice cream in the dark, completely broken. It is a grotesque image of a pet being rewarded by a cruel master. Todd Alquist, played by Jesse Plemons, often called Meth Damon by fans due to his resemblance to Matt Damon, is the perfect foil for Jesse. Todd has no conscience. Jesse is all conscience. Todd kills a kid without blinking, the train heist. Jesse mourns that kid for the rest of his life. Seeing them interact is like watching a human try to communicate with an alien who doesn't understand empathy. But we have to talk about the escape. The finale. Felina. When Walt tackles Jesse to the ground to save him from the M60 machine gun turret, it is the last time they touch. Walt asks Jesse to kill him. Do it. You want this. He slides the gun to Jesse, and Jesse refuses. Then do it yourself. It is the moment Jesse finally reclaims his agency. He refuses to follow one last order. He refuses to give Walt the satisfaction of being murdered by his partner. He drops the gun and walks away. That no is the most powerful word Jesse ever speaks. And then the drive. The need for speed. Escape. Jesse smashes through the gates of the compound in the El Camino. He is screaming. He is laughing. He is crying. It is a mix of hysteria and pure, unadulterated freedom. He is broken, yes. He has nothing. No money, no friends, no family. But he is free. That shot of him screaming in the night is the catharsis we waited 5 years for. We didn't care about the money anymore. We just wanted Jesse to live. However, the story didn't end there. Vince Gilligan felt the itch to give Jesse a proper send-off, which led to El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. Some fans argued it was unnecessary, but for Jesse lovers, it was essential medicine. It showed the PTSD. It showed the scars on his back, literally. The shower scene where we see the burn marks and the whip marks is shocking. It reminds us that while we were watching Walt play Kingpin, Jesse was being tortured in a hole. But the most epic moment of the movie is the duel, the Western showdown. Jesse, who was never a gunman, who always got beaten up, finally has to stand his ground against the welder, the guy who built his cage. He uses a second gun hidden in his pocket. He shoots through his own jacket. It is a dirty trick. It is a Heisenberg trick. It shows that he did learn from the best, but he used that lesson to secure his peace, not an empire. When he reaches Alaska, the last frontier, and hands the new identity papers to the guy, played by the legendary Robert Forster, he is finally Mr. Driscoll. He drives into the white snow, the opposite of the scorching yellow desert. The quiet at the end of El Camino is the peace Jesse earned through blood. Let's rewind to a lighter, fun fact to cleanse the palate. The "yeah, bitch" catchphrase. It is meme history, but did you know Jesse doesn't actually say it that often? Fans think he says it every episode. He actually says the word bitch about 54 times in the entire series. And the specific phrase, science bitch, he never says it. Never. He says, yeah, Mr. White, yeah, science. The internet Mandela effect added the bitch to the end of it because it felt right. But he does say, yeah, bitch, magnets. That one is real. The evolution of his language is also interesting. In the beginning, he uses yo and slang like a shield. He tries to sound street. By the end, his language is stripped down. He speaks less. He speaks clearly. The slang dies along with his innocence. The silence of the later seasons speaks volumes. Aaron Paul could convey a paragraph of dialogue with a single twitch of his jaw. Another behind-the-scenes secret involves the blue ice. We mentioned the actors ate the rock candy. Aaron Paul ate the most. He was addicted to the prop. But the prop department had to be careful. In the scenes where they are smoking it, they used a sugar-free version or a different material because inhaling burnt sugar is terrible for your lungs. But the actual act of smoking meth, Aaron Paul had never done it. He spent time with former addicts. He watched documentaries. He learned exactly how to hold the pipe, how to light the bottom, how to twist it. The ritual of the high was something he perfected so well that recovering addicts have written to him saying it was triggering to watch because it was so accurate. That is the double-edged sword of this show. It is so good at depicting the bad life that it makes it feel real. There is also the woodworking metaphor that we started with. In a deleted scene, or rather an extended concept from the script, Jesse explains why he made the box. He didn't make it to sell it. He made it because he wanted to see if he could make something good. He traded it for an ounce of weed. That is the tragedy. He had the potential to be a craftsman, an artist, a creator. He had the focus. Walt perverted that focus. Walt took a kid who could build beautiful boxes and turned him into a kid who built bombs and cooked poison. The what if here is painful. What if Jesse had never met Walt? He might have been a small-time dealer who eventually got caught and did a few months in jail and maybe, just maybe, found that woodworking teacher again. He might have been happy. The show is the story of his corruption. Let's connect Jesse to Gus Fring for a moment. Gus saw something in Jesse. In the episode Salud, when they go to Mexico to cook for the cartel, Jesse is terrified. The chemists mock him. They ask for the synthesis formula. Jesse doesn't know the math. He isn't a chemist. But he steps up. He channels Heisenberg. I'm the guy your boss brought here to show you how it's done. So stop whining and stop filming and let me cook. He owns the room. He cooks a batch that is 96.2%. The cartel chemist is stunned. Gus smiles. That smile from Gus is terrifying, but it validates Jesse. It proves that Jesse is good at this. He isn't just a junkie assistant. He is an artisan. For a brief moment, Jesse feels pride. He feels worthy. And that is the trap. The competence porn of the show lures Jesse in just as much as it lures us. He thinks if he does a good job, he will be safe. He is wrong. One final detail about the relationship between Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston. They are best friends in real life. They own a mezcal company together called Dos Hombres. Their bromance is legendary. This real-life love is what makes the on-screen hate so palatable. When Walt watches Jesse die, or thinks he does, or when Jesse screams at Walt, the emotional safety net between the actors allows them to go to the darkest places. They trusted each other. In the scene where they fight in the house, the physical brawl, they were really going for it. They were exhausted. They were bruised. And when the director yelled cut, they would hug. That foundational trust is the secret ingredient of Breaking Bad. You cannot fake that level of intimacy, even if it is a toxic, murderous intimacy. As we leave Jesse Pinkman driving into the Alaskan wilderness, finally safe from the chaos, we have to look back at the man who built the machine that chewed him up. We have to look at the man who adjusted his tie while half his face was missing. We have to look at the Chicken Man. In the next chapter, we are going to enter the pristine, terrifying world of Gustavo Fring. We will analyze the genius of Giancarlo Esposito, the box cutter scene that shocked the world, the backstory in Chile that was never fully explained, and the theory that Gus Fring was not just a drug lord, but a man driven by a love so deep it burned down an entire cartel. Straighten your tie and clean your glasses because we are about to meet the most professional villain in history. Welcome to Los Pollos Hermanos, where something delicious is always cooking. But we aren't here for the spice curls or the crispy skin. We are here to stare into the abyss. We are here to meet the man who hides in plain sight, the man who straightened his tie while half his face was missing, the man who turned a fast food franchise into the most sophisticated drug distribution network in North America. We are talking about Gustavo Fring. If Walter White is the chaotic explosion, Gus Fring is the silent implosion. He is the terrifying stillness before the storm. And the most mind-blowing fact about this character is that he almost didn't exist in this form. When the writers were looking for a new villain for Season 2, they initially offered the role to Giancarlo Esposito as a guest spot. Just a few episodes. Giancarlo said no. He told Vince Gilligan, "I don't want to be the villain of the week. I want to be a part of the family." He wanted to create a character who was a mirror to Walter White. He wanted to play a guy who was hiding in plain sight, just like Walt. Vince Gilligan agreed, expanded the role, and thanked the chemistry gods he did, because Esposito created one of the most iconic villains in the history of fiction. Let's dissect the performance because it is a masterclass in minimalism. Giancarlo Esposito used yoga and meditation to find Gus. He realized that a man with that many secrets would have to be incredibly still. Have you ever noticed that Gus barely blinks? It is unnerving. He moves like a predator who doesn't want to waste energy. When he speaks softly. This was a deliberate choice to force people to lean in, to listen closely. It is a power move, and the customer service mask is legendary. The way his face drops the second he turns away from a customer is pure horror. There is a scene where he is smiling at a DEA agent, offering him a refill, and the moment the agent looks away, Gus's eyes go dead. It is like a shark rolling its eyes back before a bite. He is the ultimate code switcher. He switches from the friendly community pillar to the ruthless cartel boss in a nanosecond, and that duality is what makes him so much scarier than Tuco. Tuco was a bomb. You knew he would explode. Gus is a landmine. You don't know he's there until you step on him. Now we have to talk about the scene, the box cutter. Season 4 premiere. Box cutter. This is the scene that established Gus as the undisputed king. Victor, his henchman, has been seen at the crime scene of Gale's murder. Victor also took it upon himself to cook a batch of meth to prove he could do it. Gus walks into the lab. He doesn't say a word. He takes off his suit jacket. He folds it perfectly. He takes off his shirt. He folds it. He puts on a hazmat suit. The silence in the room is deafening. Walt is rambling, trying to justify himself, trying to bargain. Gus just stares. He picks up a box cutter. He walks over to Victor, and then slash. He slices Victor's throat open in one brutal, efficient motion. He holds Victor while he bleeds out, staring directly into Walt's eyes. He never looks at the dying man. He looks at the man he is sending a message to. Then he drops the body, washes his hands, takes off the suit, puts his clothes back on, adjusts his tie, and speaks the only line of the scene. Get back to work. It is chilling. It is insane. But here is the hidden meaning behind the violence. Gus didn't just kill Victor because he was seen. He killed him because Victor flew too close to the sun. Victor tried to cook. He tried to be the chemist. Gus was showing Walt, you are the cook. He is the muscle. When the muscle tries to be the cook, the muscle becomes garbage. It was a twisted validation of Walt's value wrapped in a death threat. It also showed that Gus accepts no loose ends. If you are a liability, you are deleted. But what drives a man to be this cold? The answer lies in the pool, the flashback to the hacienda of Don Eladio. This is the origin story of the monster. We see a young Gus Fring with his partner, Max Arcaniega. They are the Pollos Hermanos, the chicken brothers. But they aren't brothers. The subtext, which is barely subtext, it is practically text, is that they are lovers. Max is the chemist, Gus is the businessman. They are pitching their meth business to the cartel. Don Eladio feels disrespected. He orders Hector Salamanca to shoot Max in the head. Gus is forced to watch Max bleed out into the pool. Don Eladio steps on Gus's neck and tells him, the only reason you are alive and he is not is because I know who you are. You are not in Chile anymore. This line sparked 1,000 theories. The general. Who was Gus in Chile? Was he a Pinochet general? A war criminal? The show never explicitly answers it, which makes it even more terrifying. His records are sealed. He is a ghost. But that trauma, watching the love of his life die, is the engine of the entire series. Gus isn't building an empire for money. He is building it for revenge. He wants to kill the cartel. He wants to wipe out the Salamanca family line. He wants Don Eladio to die. Every dollar he makes is a bullet for the men who killed Max. This humanizes him. It makes his cruelty understandable. He is a man with a broken heart, and a broken heart is the most dangerous weapon in the world. This leads to the Salud episode, the Vengeance. This is arguably the most epic sequence involving Gus. He agrees to go to Mexico and cook for the cartel, seemingly surrendering. He brings a gift, a bottle of rare Zafiro Añejo tequila. He pours shots for Don Eladio and all his capos. He drinks the first shot to prove it isn't poisoned. The capos drink, they party, and then the clock starts ticking. Gus goes to the bathroom. He induces vomiting. He has poisoned the entire bottle, including himself. He took a pill beforehand to delay the effects, but he is still dying. He walks out to the pool, the same pool where Max died, and watches as the entire leadership of the cartel collapses, choking and dying. He stands over Don Eladio, watching the light fade from his eyes. You filled your pockets with his blood, he tells the cartel. It is a suicide mission. He risked his own life just to ensure they all died. It is the ultimate mic drop. The discipline required to poison yourself, to maintain composure while your insides are burning, just to sell the lie. It is legendary. It proves that Gus Fring is not afraid of death. He is only afraid of failing his mission. Let's look at the infrastructure. The Super Lab. The Lavanderia Brillante. It is a masterpiece of set design, a massive, industrial-scale meth lab hidden beneath an industrial laundry. It is the perfect cover. The smells of the laundry chemicals mask the meth smells. The noise of the washers masks the noise of the machines. The trucks delivering dirty laundry are actually delivering chemicals. It is genius. But did you know the set was so huge they couldn't fit it on a soundstage initially? They had to build a massive steel structure to hold the lights. And the machinery? It was real. Those were real chemical reactors. The attention to detail was so high that they had to consult with the DEA to make sure they weren't showing too much of the real process. And the fry batter buckets? That is how they moved the meth. Los Polos Hermanos trucks carried fry batter buckets with false bottoms. Meth on the bottom, batter on top. The logistics of the Fring Empire are fascinating because they are so plausible. It is a supply chain management case study. Madrigal Electromotive, the German parent company, adds another layer of corporate realism. It shows that the drug trade isn't just guys on corners, it is multinational corporations with shareholders and logistics departments. Lydia Rodart Quayle is the face of this corporate evil, but Gus is the CEO. And we cannot talk about Gus without talking about his nemesis within the show, Hector Salamanca. The bell, ding, ding, ding. The relationship between Gus and Hector is pure psychological horror. Gus keeps Hector alive just to torture him. He visits him in the nursing home to tell him which of his relatives he has killed. The cousins are dead. Bolsa is dead. Joaquin is dead. He wants Hector to be the last one standing, so he feels the total extinction of his name. It is cruel beyond measure, but this hubris is Gus's downfall. He gets sloppy. He gets emotional. When he finds out Hector talked to the DA, he goes to kill him personally. He needs to look Hector in the eye. That need for personal satisfaction allows Walt to plant the bomb. The trap was set not for a drug lord, but for a vengeful man. Which brings us to Face Off, the explosive finale of Season 4, the moment that made television history. Hector looks at Gus. His face changes from a stroke victim grimace to a look of pure hate and triumph. He starts ringing the bell. Gus realizes too late. Honk! The explosion rips the room apart. The door blows off. Smoke fills the hallway. And then Gus walks out. For a few seconds, we think he survived. He looks fine from the right side. He straightens his tie. He buttons his jacket. It is a moment of impossible resilience. Then the camera pans. The left side of his face is gone. It is a skull. The eye socket is empty. He collapses and dies. The Terminator is finally down. The practical effects team and the CGI team worked together seamlessly to create that shot. They used a prosthetic bust of Giancarlo Esposito for the gore and digitally mapped it onto his face. It took months to perfect that few seconds of footage. It was worth every penny. It is the most memorable death in the series, maybe in all of TV. It symbolized that even in death, Gus tried to maintain his order, his dignity. He fixed his tie before he let his body hit the floor. That is commitment to the brand. Here is a what if that haunts fans. What if Walt had just taken the job and shut up? What if he accepted the $3 million for 3 months and then the extended contract and just cooked? Gus gave him a perfect lab. Gus gave him security. Gus respected the product. If Walt didn't have an ego the size of the Sandia Mountains, they could have ruled the world together. Gus was the perfect boss for a man who wanted to make money. But Walt didn't want money. He wanted to be the king. Gus was the king. There is no room for two kings. Their conflict was inevitable not because of business, but because of personality. They were too similar. Both geniuses, both ruthless, both convinced they were the smartest guy in the room. But Gus was discipline and Walt was chaos. Chaos always destroys order eventually. Another fascinating detail is the Gale-Boetticher connection. Gale was Gus's ideal cook. He was a libertarian, a nerd, a man who cooked for the love of chemistry and the money without the ego. He worshipped the process. He even sang along to Italian opera in his apartment. Gus loved Gale because Gale was manageable. He was a yes man. When Walt forced Gus to fire Gale and hire Jesse, it was the beginning of the end. Gus hated Jesse. He saw him as a junkie, a liability. The fact that Gus eventually tried to court Jesse to turn him against Walt shows how desperate the situation became. But Gale's ghost haunts the show. The lab notes book found in Gale's apartment is the breadcrumb that leads Hank to Walt. Gus's sentimental attachment to his perfect employee, keeping the notes, or rather the investigation into his death, unraveled everything. Let's also touch on the Kuwaiti story from Better Call Saul, which is technically a prequel but informs the character deeply. Gus tells a story about trapping a coati, a raccoon-like animal that ate his fruit tree. He didn't kill it quickly, he kept it alive. He tortured it. The animal suffered. It shows that Gus has a sadistic streak that goes beyond business. He enjoys the control. He enjoys the suffering of those who wrong him. This makes his professional demeanor even scarier because it is a mask for a sadist. He isn't just a businessman, he is a monster who learned to wear a suit. One final behind-the-scenes gem: the Los Polos Hermanos restaurant. The scenes were filmed at a real fast food joint called Twister's in Albuquerque. It is a burrito place. When the show became famous, Twister's kept the Los Polos mural on the wall. Fans flock there to eat burritos and sit in Walt's booth. But here is the irony. Gus Fring, the health-conscious, meticulous man, was selling fried chicken. The dichotomy of a man who serves greasy comfort food while remaining incredibly fit and ascetic is another layer of his discipline. He sells poison, meth, and poison, cholesterol. But he partakes in neither. He is above the vices he exploits. As we stare at the ruined half of Gus Fring's face, we realize that he was the ultimate challenge. He was the boss fight that took 4 seasons to win. He elevated Walter White. You cannot be a legendary hero or anti-hero without a legendary villain. Gus Fring raised the stakes from local dealer to international kingpin. He taught Walt how to be a boss. I hide in plain sight, same as you. And when Walt finally killed him, he didn't just kill a rival, he inherited the crown. But there is one man who served Gus and then served Walt and hated every minute of the transition. The man who does the dirty work. The man who creates the guys. We are talking about the bald, beautiful, grumpy grandfather of the criminal underworld. In the next chapter, we are going to fix a pimento cheese sandwich and sit down with Mike Ehrmantraut. We will discuss the tragedy of the half-measures speech, the competence porn of his tradecraft, and why Jonathan Banks deserves a monument for his eyebrows alone. Get your silenced pistol ready because we are going for a ride with the cleaner. Park your car, shut your mouth, and eat your pimento cheese sandwich. We are now entering the jurisdiction of the most competent man in Albuquerque. If Gus Fring is the CEO of the drug trade, Mike Ehrmantraut is the janitor, the security guard, and the head of HR all rolled into one grumpy, bald package. He is the man who fixes the problems that the geniuses create. And the most mind-blowing fact about Mike is that he was a complete accident. He wasn't in the show Bible. He wasn't in the pilot. He wasn't even an idea in Vince Gilligan's head until the end of Season 2. Here's the story. In the Season 2 finale, Jesse wakes up next to Jane's body. He calls Saul Goodman. The script called for Saul to come over and clean up the mess. But Bob Odenkirk, the actor who plays Saul, had a scheduling conflict. He was booked to appear in the sitcom How I Met Your Mother. He couldn't make it to the set of Breaking Bad, so the writers were in a panic. They needed a character to come and handle the dead body situation. They created a cleaner character on the fly. They cast Jonathan Banks, a veteran character actor known for playing tough guys in the 80s. He showed up, did the scene with a cold, terrifying efficiency, and the rest is history. If Bob Odenkirk hadn't booked a sitcom guest spot, we would never have met the most beloved hitman in television history. It is another one of those butterfly effects that define the show. Jonathan Banks brought a gravity to the role that grounded the entire series. Mike Ehrmantraut doesn't run, he walks. He doesn't shout, he growls. He is the physical embodiment of been there, done that. His face tells 1,000 stories before he even opens his mouth. Those eyebrows deserve their own Emmy. But let's talk about the half-measures speech, Season 3, Episode 12. This is the moment Mike stopped being just a henchman and became a philosopher of crime. He sits Walt down and tells him a story from his days as a beat cop in Philadelphia. He talks about a domestic abuser he let go, a man who eventually killed his wife. I chose a half measure when I should have gone all the way, he says. I'll never make that mistake again. This monologue is widely considered one of the best pieces of writing in the show. It defines the central conflict of the series. Do you stop halfway, or do you commit to the evil? Mike's advice to Walt, to kill Jesse, essentially, to solve the problem, is cold, but it is logical within their world. The irony, of course, is that Walt takes this advice to heart, but uses it against Mike's interests later. Walt runs over the dealers to save Jesse. He takes a full measure. Mike created the monster that would eventually kill him by teaching him the rules of the game. The tragedy of Mike is that he is the only criminal in the show who actually has a code of honor. He is loyal to a fault. He is loyal to Gus. He is loyal to his guys in prison. He is loyal to Jesse. He does everything for his granddaughter, Kaylee. We see him watching movies with her, pushing her on the swing, making balloons. He is Pop Pop. He isn't buying sports cars or fancy condos. He lives in a modest house with a recliner and a TV. Every cent he earns, millions of dollars, goes into a safety deposit box or an offshore account for Kaylee's 18th birthday. And here is the gut punch. She never gets it. The DEA seizes it. Not once, but twice. The lawyer flips and the money is gone. All that blood, all that murder, all those sleepless nights standing guard. For nothing. Mike dies knowing that he failed his one true mission. It renders his entire arc into a Shakespearean tragedy of futility. He sold his soul to provide for his family, and the devil took the payment but didn't deliver the goods. Let's look at the tradecraft. Watching Mike work is pure competence porn. We love watching people who are good at their jobs, and nobody is better than Mike. Remember the scene where he breaks into the chemical warehouse? He doesn't use a laser cutter or a bomb. He throws a shoe on the power line to create a distraction. He punches the guard in the throat. Simple, effective. Or when he bugs Walt's house. He sits in his car eating pistachios, watching the feeds. He has the patience of a saint and the eyes of a hawk. He notices things nobody else does. He is the anti-Walt. Walt overcomplicates everything with science and ego. Mike simplifies everything with experience and grit. The contrast between them is hilarious and tense. Mike hates Walt. He hates him from day one. He calls him a ticking time bomb. He tells him, "You are not the guy. You're not capable of being the guy. I had a guy, but now I don't. You are not the guy." He sees right through Heisenberg's hat. He sees the insecure, dangerous amateur underneath. And he is right. Every single warning Mike gives Walt turns out to be true. There is a specific detail about Mike's ear that fans have obsessed over. In Breaking Bad, part of his ear is missing. It looks chewed off or shot off. The show never explains it. It adds to his mystique. Was it a bullet? A knife fight? A bite? In Better Call Saul, we find out the truth. Spoiler alert for the prequel, but it adds context. He essentially did it to himself. Got it injured during a ploy to get Tuco Salamanca in jail. He sacrificed a piece of his own body to execute a plan. That is Mike. He is willing to take the pain if it gets the job done. He is a man of sacrifice. Now we have to talk about the death of Mike Ehrmantraut. It is one of the most infuriating and heartbreaking scenes in the saga. Season 5. By the river. The sun is setting. It is beautiful and quiet. Walt meets Mike to get the list of the names of the legacy employees. Mike refuses. He is done. He is leaving. He just wants to go. Walt, in a fit of pride and panic, shoots him through the car window. It is a senseless, stupid kill. Walt didn't need to do it. He could have gotten the names from Lydia. He realizes this immediately after shooting him. He walks down to the riverbank where Mike is sitting, clutching his gut, dying. Walt starts to apologize. "I just realized Lydia has the names." And Mike stops him. He delivers his final iconic line. "Shut the fuck up and let me die in peace." He doesn't want Walt's apology. He doesn't want his excuses. He just wants silence. He stares at the river and then he falls over. It is the death of the old guard. It is the moment Walt becomes irredeemable to many fans. Killing Gus was survival. Killing Mike was ego. It was the tantrum of a child with a gun. The fact that Jonathan Banks played that death with such quiet dignity, no screaming, no drama, just a tired old man ready to sleep, makes it hurt so much more. But let's go back to the pimento sandwich. Why pimento? It is a cheap, distinctively Southern working-class spread. It isn't fancy. It fits Mike perfectly. He isn't eating prosciutto or arugula. He is eating cheese and peppers mixed with mayo on white bread. It represents his lack of pretension, and in Better Call Saul, that sandwich becomes a plot point. He brings it to a bodyguard job. The other bodyguards mock him for it. They have guns. He has a sandwich. But when the time comes, Mike disarms the loudmouth with a single move, takes his gun, and keeps the sandwich. It is the ultimate don't judge a book by its cover moment. The sandwich is a symbol of his confidence. He doesn't need to look tough because he is tough. The relationship between Mike and Jesse is also crucial. It starts with hostility. Mike beats Jesse up, but slowly it evolves into a reluctant mentorship. Mike sees that Jesse has a heart. He sees that Jesse is being manipulated by Walt. There is a scene where they are driving in the car and Jesse asks where they are going. Mike doesn't answer. Jesse is terrified he is going to get whacked, but Mike is actually taking him on a collection run. He starts to trust him. He calls him Kid. When Mike dies, Jesse is the one who is truly devastated. He lost his second father figure. The first one, Walt, betrayed him. The second one, Mike, was murdered by the first. The car ride scenes with Mike and Jesse are some of the funniest and most touching in the show. The silence between them is comfortable eventually. They are both soldiers in a war they didn't start. There is a theory that Mike is the ghost of the future Walt. If Walt had been smarter, quieter, and less egotistical, he might have become Mike. But Walt could never be Mike because Walt needs the credit. Mike abhors the credit. Mike is the shadow. Walt is the spotlight. Their incompatibility is chemical. And speaking of chemistry, Mike has zero respect for the art of the cook. To him, the blue meth is just a widget. It's a product to be moved. He strips away the mystique that Walt builds around himself. That is why Walt hates him. Mike refuses to worship at the altar of Heisenberg. Let's not forget the chickens, the Los Polos Hermanos farm. When the cartel attacks the trucks, Mike is the one in the back, shooting blindly through the walls of the trailer, taking out the hijackers. He is an action hero in a cardigan. The physicality of Jonathan Banks in these scenes is impressive for a man of his age. He moves with a tactical precision that suggests years of training. The show hired real tactical advisors to show him how to hold a gun, how to clear a room, how to check a perimeter. He doesn't hold the gun sideways. He holds it with a firm two-handed grip. He checks his corners. It is this realism that sells the character. He isn't John Wick doing backflips. He is a guy who knows that if you stand in the open, you die. Another crazy detail? The balloons. In a scene where Mike is entertaining Kaylee, he uses balloons to make a sound distraction in a later heist, referencing his cleverness. But the softness he shows with her is the only time we see his eyes light up. When the police come for him at the park, the final time he sees her, he has to make a choice. He sees the cops closing in. He is behind a tree. Kaylee is on the swing. He can call out to her, say goodbye, and get arrested in front of her, traumatizing her for life. Or he can leave silently, vanish, and let her remember him as Pop Pop, who just went away. He chooses to leave. He abandons her to save her from the image of him in handcuffs. It is a heartbreaking sacrifice. He leaves her on the swing, pushing into the air while he walks into his doom. It is one of the saddest moments of what could have been. Mike also serves as the bridge to Better Call Saul. He is the connective tissue. We see how he went from a crooked cop to a parking lot attendant to a hitman. The backstory deepens the tragedy. We learn about his son, Matty. Matty was a good cop. Mike told him to debase himself to take a bribe to be part of the game to survive. Matty listened to his dad. He took the money, and his fellow cops killed him anyway because they didn't trust him. Mike lives with the guilt that he corrupted his son for nothing. That is why he breaks bad. He has nothing left to lose. He is already dead inside. His body just hasn't caught up yet. When he tells Walt, "I chose a half measure," that he is talking about his son. He tried to play it safe and his son died. He resolved never to play it safe again. We should also mention the dead eyes. Jonathan Banks has a way of looking at people that is described as shark-like. It is a 1,000-yard stare. But on set, Banks is known as a total sweetheart. He is the guy who hugs everyone. He gets emotional talking about the character. The cast loves him. The contrast between the cold-blooded killer and the warm actor is a testament to his skill. He turns that switch on and off instantly. And the grumble. The noise Mike makes when he is annoyed, a sort of low, throat-clearing growl, became a trademark. It says, "I am surrounded by idiots," without using a single word. As the sun sets on the river and Mike slides off the log, we say goodbye to the adult in the room. The babysitter is dead. Now the children, Walt, Jesse, Lydia, Todd, are left unsupervised with the matches. and things are about to burn down fast. But before the fire consumes everything, we need to visit the man who introduced Walt to Gus, the man who introduced Walt to Mike, the man who introduced the clown car to the funeral procession. We need to talk about the lawyer, the man in the cheap suit with the loud tie. In the next chapter, we are going to enter the strip mall office of Saul Goodman. We will explore the tragedy of Jimmy McGill, the improvisation of Bob Odenkirk, the hidden meaning of his commercials, and how a comic relief character became the star of a spin-off that some argue is even better than the original. Put $1 in his pocket so you have attorney-client privilege, because it is all good, man. Here we are standing in a strip mall parking lot in Albuquerque. Look up. There it is. The giant inflatable Statue of Liberty swaying in the wind, looking slightly deflated and entirely ridiculous. We are about to enter the Cathedral of Justice, or rather the office of the man who put the criminal in criminal lawyer. We are talking about Saul Goodman. If Walter White is the danger and Gus Fring is the business, Saul Goodman is the grease that keeps the gears from grinding to a halt. He is the comic relief who accidentally became the tragic heart of the entire universe. But here is the crazy fact to kick things off. Saul Goodman was never supposed to be a main character. He was a joke solution to a writing problem. In Season 2, the writers needed a way for Walt and Jesse to get Badger out of jail without killing him. They needed a sleazy lawyer. They hired Bob Odenkirk, a legendary sketch comedian from Mr. Show, known for playing loud, obnoxious characters. He was booked for 3 episodes. That was it. But the energy Odenkirk brought, the fast-talking, finger-pointing, suit-wearing, chaotic energy, was so electric that Vince Gilligan realized, wait, this guy is the key to everything. Saul became the bridge. He connected the street-level dealers to the high-level kingpins. Without Saul, Walt never meets Gus. Without Saul, Walt never meets Mike. Saul Goodman is the LinkedIn of the meth trade. Let's talk about the name. Saul Goodman. It is a pun. It's all good, man. We find out later in the spinoff that Jimmy McGill chose this name because the homeboys want a pipe-hitting member of the tribe, implying that criminals prefer a Jewish lawyer because they think he will be smarter or more aggressive. It is a racist stereotype that he cynically exploits for profit. This tells you everything you need to know about him. He is a chameleon. He will be whoever you want him to be if you pay him. But look at his office. The pillars, the faux marble columns behind his desk. They are cheap styrofoam. The wallpaper is the U.S. Constitution. It is so tacky it hurts. But it is a calculated tackiness. Saul wants to look like the little guy fighting the system. He wants his clients, drug dealers, slip-and-fall victims, public masturbators, to feel like he is one of them. He isn't a high-tower lawyer like Howard Hamlin. He is a strip mall gladiator. The brilliance of the set design is that every single item in that office screams, "I will cheat for you." And that drawer full of burner phones? That was the visual representation of his network. Before encryption apps, Saul Goodman's drawer was the dark web. Now we have to address the Lalo line. This is arguably the most important line of dialogue in the entire franchise, and it was a throwaway ad-libbed moment that changed television history. In his very first episode, Better Call Saul, Season 2, Episode 8 of Breaking Bad, Walt and Jesse kidnap Saul. They take him to the desert. They put a gun to his head near an open grave. Saul screams, "No, it wasn't me. It was Ignacio. He's the one." Walt and Jesse look confused. Then Saul asks, "Lalo didn't send you?" When they say no, Saul breathes a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God. For years, fans wondered, who is Ignacio? Who is Lalo? It seemed like just a bit of color to show Saul had other dangerous enemies. But when Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan decided to make the prequel, Better Call Saul, they looked at that one line and built an entire 6-season masterpiece around it. Ignacio became Nacho Varga. Lalo became Lalo Salamanca, the most terrifying, charismatic villain since Gus Fring. The entire tragedy of the prequel series was reverse-engineered from a panic attack Saul had in 2009. It is mind-blowing to think that Tony Dalton's incredible performance as Lalo only exists because Bob Odenkirk needed something to scream in a desert 10 years prior. Speaking of Bob Odenkirk, let's talk about the suits, the colors. We talked about color theory before, but Saul is a rainbow of chaos. He wears neon orange shirts with green ties. He wears purple suits. He wears colors that clash violently. Why? In the psychology of the show, it makes him underestimated. People look at him and see a clown, they see a used car salesman. Hank Schrader mocks him. The police mock him. Even Walt mocks him. But while they are laughing at his tie, he is picking their pocket. He is outsmarting them. The loud clothes are camouflage. They distract you from his brain. But in Better Call Saul, we learn the tragic origin of the colors. Jimmy McGill tried to be a respectable lawyer. He wore suits that looked like Matlock. He tried to do things the right way. The world spat on him. So, the colorful suits are his middle finger to the establishment. They are his war paint. Every time you see Saul in a lime green shirt in Breaking Bad, remember that it is the armor of a broken man who decided to stop caring what people think. And we cannot forget the Kevin Costner story. In Breaking Bad, Saul makes a throwaway joke about how he once convinced a woman he was Kevin Costner, and it worked because I believed it. It's a funny line about his confidence, but in the prequel, we actually see the morning after. We see him waking up next to a woman who is putting on her glasses and realizing with horror that he is not Kevin Costner. It is hilarious, but it reinforces the central theme of his character. The lie is only true if you believe it. Saul Goodman is a performance artist. He acts every second of every day. He is never not working. Even when he is alone with Walt, he is often still in Saul mode. It is only in the very rare moments, like when he tells Walt to take the money and run in the final season, that the mask slips and we see the terrified Jimmy McGill underneath. Let's discuss the A-team of the strip mall, Huel Babineau and Patrick Kuby. Huel, the large, silent bodyguard with the sticky fingers, and Kuby, the ginger-haired fixer, played by stand-up comedian Bill Burr. These two are fan favorites. The scene where they go to force Ted Beneke to sign the check is pure slapstick comedy turned tragic. They slip on the rug. It is ridiculous. But the most iconic moment is when they go to collect Walt's money from the storage unit. Millions of dollars. A pile of cash that looks like a bed. What do? They lay on it. "We are here to do a job," Kuby says. "I gotta do it, man," Huel says. And they flop onto the pile of money like it's a pile of leaves. It is the dream of every person watching. It represents the pure, childish seduction of wealth. For a moment, the crime isn't scary, it's just fun. Huel became such a meme that when the show ended, fans demanded to know what happened to him. In the final season, Hank puts Huel in a safe house and tells him to wait here. We never see him again. Legend says Huel is still sitting in that room, waiting for Hank to come back, though Better Call Saul gives us more Huel, thankfully. But Saul isn't just funny, he is actually the smartest survivor in the show. Think about it. Walt dies. Jesse is tortured and broken. Mike dies. Gus dies. Tuco dies. Lydia dies. Who survives? Saul Goodman. How? By knowing when to fold him. The vacuum cleaner repairman. Ed Galbraith. Saul is the one who has the ripcord. He knows a guy who can erase you. This plot device introduces a level of high-stakes mythos to the show. The card. The code phrase, "I need a new dust filter for a Hoover Max Extract Pressure Pro Model 60. It is so specific, so nerdy, and so serious. When Saul finally decides to use it in Granite State, it is the admission of total defeat. The scene where he is bunking with Walt in the basement of the vacuum shop is a masterclass in acting. Walt is still plotting revenge. He is angry. "I'm going to kill them all." Saul looks at him with sad, tired eyes and says, "It's over." He is the only one brave enough to tell Heisenberg that the Empire is gone. He tries to leave. Walt tries to intimidate him. "We're done when I say we're done." And Saul, for the first time, stands up to him. It's over. He walks out. He chooses a life of mediocrity as a Cinnabon manager over death. That is a victory in the Breaking Bad universe. This brings us to the Gene Takovich timeline. The black and white scenes. The flash forwards. Why black and white? It visually represents that the color has gone out of his life. Saul Goodman was a colorful character, living in a vibrant, dangerous world. Gene Takovich is a gray man living in a gray world, Omaha, Nebraska. He manages a Cinnabon. He has a mustache. He is terrified of the police. It is a purgatory. He is alive, but he isn't living. The contrast between the loud, shouting Saul and the silent, paranoid Gene is the price he paid for his crimes. He didn't die, but he lost his soul. The Cinnabon became a pilgrimage site for fans, just like the pizza house. The show made a mall food court job look like the ultimate witness protection depression. Also, consider the Wayfarer 500 Hein ribbon. After the plane crash in Season 2, everyone wears those blue ribbons to show support. Saul wears his for way too long. Weeks, months later, he is still wearing it. Why? Because it helps him ambulance chase the victims. He is suing the airline. He wears the ribbon to look sympathetic to potential clients. It is a subtle detail that shows his sociopathic opportunism. He turns a national tragedy into a marketing strategy. It is disgusting, but you have to admire the hustle. And yet beneath that, there is the question. Is he doing it because he is evil or because he is desperate? Better Call Saul recontextualizes this. We start to wonder if he hates himself while he's doing it. One of the most genius subtle details in Saul's office is the scales of justice behind his desk. If you look closely, they are almost never balanced. One side is always hanging lower than the other. It is a visual metaphor for his practice. Justice is never blind in Saul's office. It is tipped in favor of whoever pays. And the commercials. Better Call Saul. The low-budget aesthetic. The static. The bad acting. They were filmed on old VHS cameras to look authentic. They captured the essence of late-night local TV perfectly. They are so catchy that Better Call Saul became the chant of the fan base. It is arguably the best marketing slogan in fictional history. There is also the Hello Kitty phone. Jesse uses a burner phone given to him by Saul that has a Hello Kitty case. It is a hilarious visual gag, a hardcore drug dealer holding a pink cat phone. But it also represents Saul's haphazard inventory. He buys whatever is cheap. He doesn't care if it looks cool, he cares if it works. It reinforces the utilitarian nature of the criminal underworld. They aren't James Bond. They are guys using cheap tech to avoid the DEA. Let's not forget the laser tag obsession. Throughout the show, Saul is desperately trying to get Walt to buy a laser tag arena to launder his money. Danny's laser tag. Walt refuses. He wants the car wash. Saul argues for the laser tag because it comes with a Danny, a manager who will keep his mouth shut. It becomes a running joke. Saul's frustration that Walt won't take the easy, scientific laundering path, laser tag, lots of small cash transactions, no inventory, over the hard path, car wash, actual labor, highlights the difference in their egos. Walt wants the car wash because of the story. He used to work there. It's personal. Saul just wants the math to work. Saul is the pragmatist. Walt is the dramatist. As we walk out of the office, past the waiting room full of neck brace-wearing scammers, we realize that Saul Goodman was the best magician in Albuquerque. He distracted us with the left hand, the suits, the jokes, the commercials, while the right hand was arranging the pieces that would destroy everything. He was the enabler. He was the guy who said yes when he should have said no. But now, we have to leave the legal world and go back to the source. We have to go back to the classroom, to the family. But not the white family. We are going to look at the DEA. We are going to visit the man who was chasing the monster in his own backyard. The man who collected minerals. In the next chapter, we are going to kick down the door with Hank Schrader. We will analyze the panic attacks, the machismo, the tragic irony of the WWI discovery, and the moment the show turned a caricature of a jock cop into a true hero. Check your Glock and grab a Schrader Broy because the investigation is heating up. Open a cold one, preferably a Schrader Broy, and take a seat in the man cave. We are about to dissect the most tragic figure in the Breaking Bad tapestry. We are talking about Assistant Special Agent in Charge Henry Hank Schrader. When we first met him, he was loud, he was obnoxious, and he was casually racist. He was the quintessential jock cop who treated the drug war like a football game. We all thought he was the comic relief, the foil to Walt's genius. But over 5 agonizing seasons, Hank Schrader transformed into the true hero of the story. He became the moral compass that pointed north even when the magnetic field of Albuquerque was spinning out of control. And the most mind-blowing fact about Hank? His blindness wasn't incompetence, it was love. He couldn't see Heisenberg because he loved Walter White too much. The monster was his brother-in-law, the man he pitied, the man he protected. It is a Greek tragedy of epic proportions. The clues were there, the missing equipment, the sudden money, the weird behavior. But Hank's brain refused to process them because the truth was too painful to exist. Let's start with the minerals. Jesus Christ, Marie, they're minerals. It is one of the most quoted lines in the show. It became an internet sensation. But let's look past the meme. Why minerals? Why did a tough guy DEA agent suddenly become obsessed with purple geodes? It wasn't just boredom during his recovery from the shooting. It was a desperate attempt to find order in a chaotic world. Hank had lost control of his body. He was paralyzed from the waist down temporarily. He had lost control of his job. He was suspended. He had lost control of his masculinity. He needed his wife to help him use the bathroom. The minerals were solid. They were unbreakable. They were chemically defined structures that made sense. By organizing them, cataloging them, and obsessing over their purity, he was trying to rebuild his shattered psyche. It was his version of Walt's purity. Walt had the blue meth. Hank had the blue geodes. They were both seeking control through chemistry, just on opposite sides of the law. It is a brilliant parallel that shows how similar the two men actually were in their obsessiveness. We have to rewind to the turtle scene. Negro y Azul, Season 2. This is the moment Hank's world cracked. Up until this point, the drug war was fun for him. It was guns and glory. Then he goes to El Paso. He tries to fit in with the hardened federales. He mocks them. And then the tortoise walks up. A severed human head, the head of Tortuga, played by Danny Trejo, is mounted on a tortoise shell. Hola DEA is painted on the side. It is gruesome. Hank, the tough guy, has a panic attack. He runs to his truck to vomit. The other agents laugh at him. Look at the gringo. And then, boom! The tortoise explodes. The agents who were laughing are torn to pieces. Limbs are flying. If Hank hadn't had that panic attack, if he hadn't shown weakness, he would have been dead. His vulnerability saved his life. This is the first time we see the PTSD set in. The ringing in the ears, the heavy breathing. The show did an incredible job of depicting trauma not as a weakness, but as a physiological response to horror. Hank stops being a caricature and becomes a human being who is scared out of his mind, but puts the badge back on anyway. That is bravery, and that bravery leads us to The Parking Lot. Season 3, Episode 7. 1 minute. This is widely considered the greatest action sequence in the history of the show. Hank is sitting in his car. He has just beaten up Jesse. He has turned in his gun and badge. He is a civilian. Then the phone rings. A digitally altered voice says, "2 men are coming to kill you. You have 1 minute." We know now that the call came from Victor, just Gus, attempting to cause chaos and have Hank kill the Salamanca cousins. The tension in that 60 seconds is suffocating. The clock ticks. Hank looks around. He sees the cousins, the shiny suits, the skull boots, the axe. When the shooting starts, it is chaos. Hank is unarmed, mostly. He uses his car to crush one cousin. He gets shot. He is bleeding out on the pavement. The other cousin, Marco, walks up to him. He has a clear shot. He can end it. But Marco is arrogant. "Too easy," he says. He drops the gun and picks up the axe. He wants to finish Hank the cartel way. That moment of hubris gives Hank the split second he needs to load the hollow point bullet, the one Marco dropped, into his gun and blow Marco's head off. It is visceral. It is terrifying. And here's the insane detail: the hollow point bullet. Earlier in the season, Hank had received that specific bullet as a gift or a sample. It was a black Talon or similar high-damage round. The fact that the specific bullet that saved his life was one designed to cause maximum damage is a grim irony. Hank survived by the skin of his teeth, and that parking lot became sacred ground for fans. Let's talk about the recovery. The bedridden Hank. This was a bold choice by the writers. Usually TV cops get shot and are back in action the next episode. Hank spent almost 2 seasons recovering. We saw the ugly side of recovery. He was mean. He was abusive to Marie. He was depressed. He lashed out at the person trying to help him. It was hard to watch because it was real. It showed that trauma makes you ugly, but it also gave us the investigation from the bedroom. Hank, with nothing but time and a pile of files, starts to piece it together. He finds the Los Polos Hermanos napkin. He connects the dots to Gail. He connects the dots to Gus. He does better police work from his bed than the entire DEA did from their office. It proves that Hank is a brilliant detective. He isn't just a door kicker, he has a mind like a steel trap. He figured out Gus Fring was a drug lord when everyone else thought he was a nice chicken man. He was the only one who saw through the mask. And then, the toilet. The moment the universe collapsed. Season 5, Episode 8. Gliding overall. The family is having a nice BBQ by the pool. Everyone is happy. The cancer is in remission. The money is made. Hank has to use the bathroom. He goes to the master bath. He looks for something to read. He picks up a copy of Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. He opens it. He sees the inscription, "To my other favorite WW. It's an honor working with you. GB." Flashback. Hank remembers Gail's notebook. To WW. He remembers joking with Walt. Willy Wonka? Walter White? Zoom in. The sound drops out. The realization hits Hank like a freight train. The panic attack returns, but this time it isn't fear. It is pure, unadulterated betrayal. In that silent moment on the toilet, Hank realizes his entire life is a lie. The man he barbecued with, the man he cried to, the man he paid medical bills for, is the devil he has been hunting. It is the greatest cliffhanger in TV history, and it happened on a toilet. Only Breaking Bad could make a bowel movement the turning point of a tragedy. This leads to the garage scene. The confrontation. Walt tries to leave. Hank closes the garage door. The lighting goes dark. It feels like a cage match. Hank punches Walt in the face. It is the punch we have been waiting 5 years for. It was you. All along it was you. The acting by Dean Norris here is Oscar-worthy. The rage, the hurt, the confusion. He isn't just a cop arresting a crook. He is a brother realizing he has been sleeping next to a viper. And Walt's reaction? Tread lightly. The way the power dynamic shifts in that garage is a masterclass. Hank realizes he is out of his depth. He isn't dealing with Walt anymore. He is dealing with Heisenberg. And yet Hank never backs down. He investigates his own family. He puts his career on the line. He teams up with Jesse. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. A behind-the-scenes fact about Dean Norris. He is a Harvard graduate. He played the dumb jock so well that people assumed he was just a tough guy actor. In reality, he is incredibly intellectual. He understood the Shakespearean nature of Hank's arc better than anyone. He pushed for the panic attacks. He wanted to show the vulnerability. And originally, Dean Norris asked for Hank to be killed off in the middle of the final season because he had a pilot for another show, Under the Dome. Vince Gilligan said, "No, we need you until the end. The story is you versus Walt." Thank God he stayed because the finale wouldn't have worked without Ozymandias. Speaking of Ozymandias, let's go to the desert, to Haji Lee, the place where it began and ended. Hank finally catches Walt. He puts the cuffs on him. "I got you." It is his moment of triumph. He reads him his rights. He calls Marie. "Baby, I got him." That phone call is devastating because we know what is coming. We see the dust cloud in the distance, the Nazis arrive, the shootout, and then the standoff. Hank is on the ground, shot in the leg. Jack has a gun to his head. Walt is begging. "You can have the money, $80 million. And Hank. Hank looks at Walt with a mixture of pity and resolve. He delivers the line that defines his character. "You're the smartest guy I ever met, but you're too stupid to see." He made up his mind 10 minutes ago. He doesn't beg. He doesn't cry. He accepts his fate. He looks at Jack and says, "Do what you're going to do." Bang! No music, just the sound of the wind. Hank Schrader dies on his back in the dirt, staring at the sky. He died a hero. He died with his dignity intact. He refused to give the Nazis the satisfaction of fear. It is a death that hurts more than any other because Hank was the only one who didn't deserve it. He was just doing his job. And the grave. The disrespect of the grave. The Nazis just dump him in the hole where the money was. Walt's money literally replaces Hank's body. It is a brutal visual metaphor. The greed buried the law. And for episodes, we don't know where he is. Marie doesn't know. The lack of closure is torture for the audience. When Walt finally gives the coordinates to Skylar, it is the only decent thing he does in the finale. He gives Hank back to his family. Let's lighten the mood with Schrader Bry. It started as a joke. Hank brewing beer in his garage. The bottles exploding in the night, sounding like gunshots. another PESD trigger. But the fans loved it. It represented Hank's desire to create something, just like Walt created meth. Hank created beer. Wholesome versus toxic. And guess what? Dean Norris actually made it real. Years after the show ended, he launched Schraderbräu as a real beer brand. You can buy it. He does signings. It is a testament to how beloved the character became. The jock who brewed beer became a cultural icon. We also have to talk about Gomi, Stephen Gomez, Hank's partner, the Sancho Panza to his Don Quixote. Gomi was the loyal friend who stuck by Hank, even when Hank was being crazy. He went to the laundry with him, he went to the desert with him, and he died with him. Gomez's death happens off-screen, or rather, in the initial hail of bullets. We see his body lying next to Hank. It emphasizes that Hank is alone at the end. But the brotherhood between them was real. They joked, they insulted each other in that Spanglish way that felt incredibly authentic to New Mexico. Hey, Gomi! It grounded Hank. It showed he was capable of deep friendship. There is a theory that Hank is the true protagonist of Breaking Bad. Think about it. A dedicated lawman slowly uncovers a massive conspiracy, overcomes physical disability, battles his own demons, and eventually sacrifices his life to stop a monster. If you edit the show from Hank's perspective, it is a heroic cop drama. The tragedy is that we were forced to root against him for 5 years. We were complicit. When Hank was closing in on the RV in the junkyard, we were screaming, "Go away, Hank!" We wanted the bad guy to get away. The show tricked us into hating the hero. That is the genius of the writing. It corrupted the audience. By the time Hank died, we felt the guilt of our own complicity. We realized we had been cheering for the murderer of the only good man left. One subtle detail: the elevator scene. After Hank beats up Jesse, he gets into an elevator with Marie. The doors close, and he breaks down. He sobs into her shoulder. It is the only time he lets the mask fall completely before the end. It shows that the toxic masculinity he projected was a shield. He was terrified of being weak, of not being the man. But in the end, his strength wasn't in his muscles or his gun. It was in his integrity. He refused to compromise. He could have taken the money. He could have let Walt go and saved his family the embarrassment. But he said no. The law is the law. That rigid morality was his downfall, but also his glory. As we pour one out for Isaac Schrader, we have to look at the wreckage he left behind. A widow who loves purple, a sister-in-law who is a pariah, and a nephew who lost his father figure. But the story isn't quite over. We have dealt with the heroes and the villains, but we haven't talked about the victims who weren't even players in the game. We haven't talked about the collateral damage that makes you lose sleep. We are going to look at the children, the innocents. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about Drew Sharp, Andrea, Brock, and the plane crash victims. We will explore the darkest corners of the show, the moments where Breaking Bad went from a crime drama to a horror movie, and why the pink teddy bear is the most important prop in television history. Prepare yourself because this next part is going to hurt. We are now walking into the shadows. If the previous chapters were about the players in the game, the kings, the pawns, the knights, this chapter is about the spectators who got hit by the stray bullets. We are entering the darkest corners of Breaking Bad. This is where the show stops being a cool crime thriller and becomes a psychological horror film. We are going to talk about the blood that can never be washed off. We are going to talk about the children, and we have to start with the jar. The glass jar with the holes punched in the lid. Inside, a tarantula. It is a symbol of curiosity, of nature, of a sunny day in the desert. But for every fan of the show, that jar is a trigger for pure trauma. We are talking about Drew Sharp, the boy on the dirt bike. The Dead Freight episode is a high-octane heist movie. It is exciting. Walt, Jesse, and Mike rob a train. It feels like an old western. We are cheering. Yeah, they got the methylamine. They pull off the perfect crime, and then the engine cuts. The celebration starts, and they look over. There's a kid. Just a kid on a motorbike watching them. He waves. It is a friendly, innocent wave. And Todd Alquist, the dead-eyed sociopath, waves back. And then he shoots the kid. Bang, no hesitation. No music, just a dead child in the dirt. It is the single most shocking moment of violence in the series because it was so casual. But the true horror isn't the shooting. It's what happens next. The dissolving sequence. We see them taking apart the dirt bike. Piece by piece, they cut the frame, they put it in barrels, and then they dig up the body. They put Drew Sharp in a barrel of acid. They erase him. The visual of the dirt bike being dismantled is a metaphor for how they dismantled a human life. It is clinical, it is industrial. And the most insane detail? In the very next episode, Buyout, we see Walt and Jesse discussing what to do. Jesse is traumatized. He is crying. He wants out. And Walt? Walt is whistling. He is whistling a happy tune while he sets up the tent to cook meth. That whistle is the moment Walter White truly died, and the devil took over. He wasn't just indifferent to the child's death, he was over it. He was already thinking about the profit. This leads us to the ultimate tragedy, Andrea Cantillo. If Drew Sharp was the shock, Andrea was the heartbreak. She was Jesse's hope. She was the one person who offered him a normal life. And the way she died? It is the cruelest scene Vince Gilligan ever filmed. Todd shows up at her door. He looks polite. I'm a friend of Jesse's. She trusts him. She steps out onto the porch to look for Jesse, and Todd just shoots her in the back of the head. It is silent. It is quick. She falls. But the camera doesn't linger on her. It cuts to the car. Jesse is in the car, gagged, bound, forced to watch. The guttural, muffled scream that Aaron Paul lets out is the sound of a soul shattering into a million pieces. He is thrashing against the glass, helpless. They didn't just kill her. They made him watch to punish him. It was a personal execution, and the reason? Just to keep him cooking. She was a line item in a business negotiation. Kill the girl, the cook works. The banality of that evil is terrifying, and we leave her body there, on the cold pavement, as the car drives away. She was a mother. She was innocent. She had nothing to do with the meth. She died because she loved the wrong man. And what about Brock? Brock Cantillo, the survivor. He wakes up one morning and his mom is gone. He doesn't know she was executed. He just knows she never came back. He is left an orphan. But his trauma started way before that, the poisoning. We touched on the lily of the valley, but think about it from the kid's perspective. He is eating cereal. He gets sick. He ends up in the ICU fighting for his life. He doesn't know why. And then later, the nice man, Walt, comes to his house. Look at the way Brock looks at Walt in Season 5. He doesn't smile. He looks guarded. There is a fan theory that Brock knew. Kids have intuition. He sensed that Walt was the bad man. When Walt sits with him on the couch trying to make small talk, Brock is silent. It is a scene of unbearable tension. Walt is sitting next to the child he tried to kill, pretending to be a friendly uncle. It is the behavior of a predator. Brock is the silent witness to the entire tragedy of the Pinkman arc. He is the reason Jesse cooks, the reason Jesse escapes, and the reason Jesse can never be happy. In El Camino, Jesse writes a letter to Brock. We never see what it says. We don't need to. It is an apology that can never be accepted. Now, let's zoom out to the butterfly effect of horror. Wayfarer 515. The plane crash. It is easy to forget the scale of this. 167 people died. They rained down on the suburbs of Albuquerque, and it was all because Walt let Jane die. The chain of events is mind-blowing in its tragic logic. Walt watches Jane die. Jane's dad, Donald Margolis, is consumed by grief. Donald goes back to work as an air traffic controller too soon. He is distracted. He allows two planes to collide. Walt didn't crash the planes, but he loaded the gun. The debris field is a physical manifestation of Walt's moral blast radius. The pink teddy bear falling into the pool is the anchor. But think about the gym assembly scene. The school gathers to mourn the victims. Walt is sitting there wearing that ridiculous blue ribbon. He takes the microphone. And what does he say? He tries to logic the tragedy away. It wasn't a 747, it was a 737. People survive these things. But it's tied for the 50th worst crash? He is minimizing the death count to make himself feel better. He is literally arguing with the statistics of mass death to soothe his own guilty conscience. It is one of the most cringe-inducing sociopathic moments of the character. Everyone in the gym is looking at him like he is an alien. He has lost the ability to feel human empathy. He only understands numbers and Donald Margolis, played by the incredible John Delancey, Q from Star Trek. We see him in the bar with Walt before the crash. They have a drink. They talk about their daughters. Walt talks about Holly. Donald talks about Jane. They bond as fathers. Never give up on family, Donald says. This advice is what pushes Walt to go to Jesse's house that night, which leads to him being there when Jane dies. It is a time loop of tragedy. Donald gives Walt the advice that leads to Walt watching Donald's daughter die. And then we hear on the radio later that Donald tried to commit suicide. We never find out if he succeeded, but the implication is dark. Walt destroyed that man completely. He took his daughter, his career, his sanity, and his life, all without ever pulling a trigger on him directly. Let's go back to the peekaboo kid, the nameless boy in the trap house. This episode is a horror movie in itself. The squalor, the darkness, the skank mother, and the calm, drug-addled father. The kid is filthy, playing with a bug on the floor. He is mute. He has seen too much. Jesse tries to play peekaboo with him to get a smile. It is heartbreaking. When the ATM machine eventually crushes the father's head, a scene of visceral, splatter-gore violence, Jesse grabs the kid, covers his eyes, runs him outside, sits him on the curb, wraps him in a blanket, and tells him, "You have a good life, you hear me?" Then he calls the cops to save him. It is the moment we knew Jesse was an angel in hell. But the reality is bleak. That kid goes into the foster system. He is traumatized for life. He saw his dad's head crushed. Jesse saved him, but the damage was already done. It is a reminder that in this world, even the survivors are broken. Then there is Tomas Cantillo, Andrea's little brother, the kid on the bike who shot Combo. He was a child soldier. The gang members used him because he wouldn't be charged as an adult. He circles Combo on his bike, pulls out a gun, and shoots him. It is shocking. But then, Tomas becomes a loose end. The dealers kill him. They murder an 11-year-old boy just to clear the board. This is what triggers Jesse's suicidal rage. He grabs his gun and goes to kill the dealers. He is willing to die to avenge Tomas. This leads to Walt running them over with the Aztec. The death of Tomas is the catalyst for the open war between Walt, Jesse, and Gus. An 11-year-old boy's murder was just a strategic pawn move for the cartel. It highlights the absolute lack of value placed on human life in the drug trade. We also have to mention Hugo Archuleta. Remember him? The janitor at the high school. He was a nice guy. He helped Walt. He cleaned up Walt's vomit. He was kind to the kids. And when the equipment went missing because Walt stole it, the DEA investigated Hugo. They found a joint in his car, just a joint. And because of that, he was fired. His reputation was ruined. He was arrested. We never see him again. Walt stood by and watched a good man's life get destroyed to cover his own theft. He didn't say a word. It was collateral damage. Hugo wasn't killed, but his life was over. It showed early on that Walt was willing to let innocent people take the fall for his crimes. It was a small evil that paved the way for the big evils. And let's talk about the disappearing of bodies. The acid. It is the ultimate disrespect. It denies the family a funeral. It denies them closure. We see it with Emilio. We see it with Drew Sharp. We see it with Mike, almost. The barrels are the coffins of the Breaking Bad universe. The sound of the slurry being poured out. It is the sound of total erasure. There is a psychological horror in knowing that these people didn't just die. They ceased to exist. They became chemical waste. It strips the sanctity of death away. There is a subtle, haunting detail in the Fly episode related to Jane. When Walt is drugged and sleepy, he almost confesses to Jesse. He talks about the perfect moment to die. He says he should have died the night Jane died. He says, "I went to your house, and I met her father that night." He is dancing on the edge of the truth. He describes the coincidence of meeting Donald Margulis. He calls it astronomical. He is haunted by the universe's dark humor. He realizes that the universe conspired to put him in that bar, to send him to that house, to let him watch her die. He feels the weight of it. For a second, he is human. He realizes that his survival has cost too much. "I've lived too long," he says. It is the most self-aware line he ever speaks. He acknowledges that everything after that night, the plane crash, the Gale murder, the poisoning, is rot. He is a corpse walking, infecting everyone else. We must also consider the white supremacist compound victims. The women we see in the background. The slaves? It is hinted that Jack's gang runs a dark operation. We see people working on the meth equipment who look terrified. When Walt uses the machine gun turret in the finale, he kills the Nazis, but he also kills the infrastructure of a place that was likely a hellhole for many nameless people. The violence of the finale is cathartic, but it is also a bloodbath. As we stand in the debris field of the Wayfair 515 crash, holding the scorched pink teddy bear, we realize that the cool factor of Heisenberg is gone. You can't put a pork pie hat on a dead child. You can't say, "I am the danger" to a grieving father. The show forces us to look at the cost. It rubs our noses in it. And now the bill is coming due. The check is on the table. The empire is crumbling. The cancer is back. The DEA is closing in. We are heading towards the end game. In the next chapter, we are going to drive to New Hampshire. We are going to live in a cabin with a barrel of money and no soul. We will discuss the granite state, the loneliness of the king, the theme song that only played once, and the final unstoppable march to Felina. Pack your warm clothes because it is getting cold. Bundle up because we are leaving the scorching heat of the New Mexico desert behind. We are trading the turquoise sky for the oppressive, silent white of a New Hampshire winter. We are entering the granite state. This is the penultimate chapter of the saga, and it is arguably the most psychological intense hour of the entire series. It is the purgatory of Walter White. If Ozymandias was the death of his world, Granite State is the death of his identity. We find Walt not as a kingpin, but as a ghost. He is Mr. Lambert now. He lives in a cabin that is essentially a wooden coffin buried in the snow. And the most mind-blowing irony of this entire situation? He has a barrel with $11 million in cash sitting right next to him, and he cannot buy a loaf of bread. He is the richest man in the county, and he is starving. He is the most powerful criminal in America, and he is powerless to fix his own heating. This is the universe playing its final cruel joke on Heisenberg. The money he killed for, the money he destroyed his family for, is now just paper. It is kindling. It is useless. The isolation is total. The silence is deafening. We are about to spend an hour watching a man slowly rot inside his own head, and it is riveting. Let's talk about Ed Galbraith, the disappearer, played by the late, great Robert Forster. This character is a legend. He appears in only one episode of Breaking Bad, and El Camino and Better Call Saul, yet he casts a massive shadow. He is the Karen of the underworld, the ferryman who takes souls across the river Styx. But instead of a boat, he drives a red minivan. Robert Forster's performance is a masterclass in less is more. He doesn't judge Walt. He doesn't fear Walt. He treats the great Heisenberg like a difficult customer at a vacuum repair shop. If you leave this property, I will not come back. It is a simple rule. He is the jailer. The dynamic between them is fascinating because Ed is the only person left on Earth who knows who Walter White really is. He is the only human connection. And Walt is so desperate for that connection that he pays Ed $10,000 just to stay for an extra hour to play cards. Think about that. $10,000 for 1 hour of human interaction. It is the most pathetic we have ever seen Walt. He is begging for company. He is paying a fortune just to have someone to shuffle a deck of cards with, because the silence of that cabin is driving him insane. It perfectly illustrates the total hollowness of his victory. He won the game, he got the money, and his prize is solitary confinement. The physical transformation of Bryan Cranston in this episode is terrifying. He lost weight. He looks frail. The Heisenberg muscle is gone. His wedding ring, the symbol of the marriage he destroyed, falls off his finger because he has become so skeletal. He has to tie it around his neck with a string. It is a visceral image of his diminishing self. He is shrinking. The cancer is back, and without the adrenaline of the drug trade to keep him going, he is withering away. He is hooking himself up to IV drips in a dark room, looking like a vampire who ran out of blood. The Ensure bottles lining the counter are a grim detail. He isn't eating steak. He is drinking protein sludge just to stay alive. Why? What is he staying alive for? Revenge? Family? At this point, he doesn't even know. He is just surviving out of spite. Then comes the gate scene. The end of the driveway. It is just a simple gate, but for Walt, it is the edge of the world. He walks up to it. The music swells. He looks down the road. He wants to leave. He wants to take his box of money and go to a post office to send it to Flynn, but he stops. He sees the snow. He feels the cold, and he turns back. He is a prisoner of his own fame. The manhunt is on every TV channel. Heisenberg is everywhere, which means Walter White can be nowhere. The realization that he is trapped in this beautiful, snowy hell is etched on his face. He is the king of nothing. But the silence is broken by the phone call, the most heartbreaking phone call in the series. Walt figures out a way to call Flynn. He calls him at school. He pretends to be someone else to get him on the line. He is excited. He has a plan. He is going to send the money. He tells Flynn, "I'm going to send you money. Louis can pick it up." He is frantic. He sounds like a madman. And Flynn? Flynn destroys him. Flynn doesn't want the money. Flynn doesn't want an explanation. He screams, "You killed Uncle Hank. You killed him." And then, the dagger. "Why are you still alive? Why don't you just die already?" Click. The line goes dead. This is the moment the family man delusion finally dies. For 5 seasons, Walt told himself, "I'm doing this for my family." He used it as a shield. He used it to justify murder. And now his son, the person he loves most in the world, is wishing for his death. The logic collapses. If the family wants him dead, then everything he did was for nothing. The money is poison. The empire is ash. It is the emotional climax of the series. Walt hangs up the phone, and the look in his eyes is total defeat. He is done. He has nothing left to fight for. So he does the unthinkable. He calls the DEA. He calls the local police. He leaves the phone off the hook so they can trace the location. "I'm at the bar. Come get me." He surrenders. He sits at the bar. He orders a dimple pinch. Neat. It is the drink of a man who is ready to face the executioner. He is calm. The bartender flips through the channels on the TV. Walt is just waiting for the sirens. He is ready to end it. He accepts that he is the villain. He accepts that he lost. It is a moment of profound sadness. We, the audience, are almost relieved. It's over, we think. He's finally going to stop. But then, the TV. The universe intervenes one last time. The bartender stops on the Charlie Rose show. And who is on the screen? Elliot and Gretchen Schwartz, the founders of Gray Matter, the ghosts of Walt's past. They are being interviewed about their charitable donations to drug rehab centers. The interviewer asks them about Walter White. Is he still connected to the company? And Elliot, with a smug, dismissive wave of his hand, says, "No. Walter White has nothing to do with us. He contributed nothing." Gretchen adds, "The only thing he contributed was the name." Boom! The spark ignites. You can see it in Bryan Cranston's eyes. The sadness evaporates. The defeat vanishes. In its place, a cold, hard, diamond-like rage forms. They are stealing his credit. They are minimizing his genius. They are saying he was nobody. Walter White might have been willing to surrender to the police, but Heisenberg will never surrender to mediocrity. He will not let them write his history. He will not let them say he was just a name. It hits his ego, the only thing he has left. The ego that started the whole mess is the thing that brings him back from the dead. And then comes the music. The theme song. For 61 episodes, we heard the Breaking Bad theme, that twanging dobro guitar and the unsettling hum, only in the opening credits. We never heard it in the show itself. Until now. As the police sirens approach the bar, the camera pans to the glass of whiskey. It is untouched. Walt is gone. And as the camera moves, the full, extended version of the Breaking Bad theme blasts through the speakers. It is the most hype moment in television history. It signals the final transformation. Walter White is dead. The cancer victim is dead. The family man is dead. Only the legend remains. He isn't going back to Albuquerque to save himself. He is going back to settle all family business. He is going back to burn it all down. The use of the theme song there tells the audience, buckle up. The finale is going to be a war. It gives you goosebumps just thinking about it. It transforms a scene of surrender into a scene of resurrection. Let's analyze the gray matter motivation again because it is crucial. Many fans misunderstood this. They thought Walt went back for the money. No, he went back for the narrative. Throughout the show, Walt felt cheated by gray matter. He felt he sold his potential for $5,000. Seeing Elliot and Gretchen living his life, taking credit for his intellect, was the original sin that created the chip on his shoulder. By ending the series with a confrontation with them, the writers circled back to the very beginning. The drug lords, the Nazis, the DEA, they were all distractions. The real enemy was always Walt's feeling of inadequacy compared to his peers. He couldn't die knowing that the world thought he was a loser who contributed nothing. He had to prove he was the king. Even if it meant dying, he had to die as the man who built the empire, not the man who was forgotten. It is petty, it is narcissistic, and it is perfectly Walter White. There is also a fascinating what if here. What if the bartender hadn't changed the channel? What if the police had arrived 2 minutes earlier? Walt would have been arrested. He would have died in a prison hospital, miserable and hated. Flynn would never have gotten the money. The Nazis would have kept the cash. Jesse would have died in the cage. The accident of seeing that interview saved Jesse Pinkman's life. It is another example of chaos theory. A random channel surf in New Hampshire led to the liberation of a slave in New Mexico. It fits the show's philosophy that the universe is governed by random, volatile chemical reactions. The cabin in the snow is also a visual opposite of the RV in the desert. The RV was hot, cramped, but full of motion and energy. It was yellow and orange. The cabin is cold, spacious, but static and dead. It is white and gray. It represents the end of the chemical reaction. The reaction has frozen. Walt needs to introduce a catalyst, himself, back into the mix to get the heat rising again. The cinematography in this episode is stark. The shots of the snowy woods are lonely and beautiful. It feels like a different show. It feels like a Western where the old gunslinger is exiled to the mountains before his final ride. We also need to appreciate the M60 machine gun setup. We saw it in the flash forward in Season 5, Episode 1. The teasing. We knew Walt would buy a big gun. We knew he would return, but we didn't know why. Granite State connects the dots. We see him in the flash forward at the Denny's, arranging the bacon into the number 52. He is celebrating his birthday alone. This connects to the pilot 50 in Season 4, 51. But the 52nd birthday is grim. He looks like a Unabomber. He is coughing. He is taking pills. But he has the keys to the car with the gun. The Granite State episode is the bridge that explains how he got from the cabin to that Denny's. It explains the desperation. He isn't planning a heist. He is planning a suicide mission. He doesn't expect to survive the M60. He just wants to take everyone with him. Let's talk about the whiskey. The Dimple Pinch. It was the drink Walt requested when he killed Mike, though he didn't get to drink it then. It is the drink of a man who appreciates the finer things but never really got to enjoy them. Leaving it on the bar is symbolic. He is denying himself the final comfort. He is staying sharp. He is breaking the pattern of the sad drunk. He is sobering up for violence. The bartender saying it's on the house because he thinks Walt is just a sad old guy is the final insult that Walt accepts. He uses that underestimation, just like he used Tuco's underestimation and Gus's. Everyone thinks he is finished. That is his greatest tactical advantage. The episode title, Granite State, is the nickname for New Hampshire. But it also refers to Walt's state of mind. He has hardened. He has turned to stone. The emotional, crying, begging Walt of Ozymandias is gone. The Walt who pleaded for Hank's life is gone. The Walt who tries to reason with Flynn is gone. The man who leaves that bar is a statue of cold determination. He is granite. Nothing can hurt him anymore because he is already dead. He is just a force of nature moving towards a destination. There is a small detail regarding the vacuum guy's service. He brings Walt newspapers, but he cuts out the articles. He curates Walt's reality. Walt tries to piece together what is happening from the scraps. It highlights his lack of omniscience. For the first time, Heisenberg doesn't know everything. He doesn't know about Jesse. He assumes Jesse is free or dead. He doesn't know the Nazis are cooking his blue meth. He thinks the blue meth on the market is his old stock. When he finds out, likely via the Charlie Rose interview mentions, or just intuition later, that the blue meth is still flowing, he realizes someone is copying him. This insults him. Someone is cooking my recipe. He thinks it's Jesse partnering with them willingly. He goes back to kill Jesse for being a partner to the Nazis. He doesn't know Jesse is a slave. This misunderstanding is key. He goes to the compound with the intent to kill Jesse Pinkman. It is only when he sees Jesse, chained, scarred, broken, that his intention shifts. Granite State sets up a revenge killing that turns into a rescue mission, but the rescue was never the original plan. And the card trick. In the cabin, Walt tries to learn a card trick. He fails, he drops the cards. He can't do the sleight of hand anymore. His hands are shaking too much. It shows that he has lost his dexterity, his fine motor skills. He can't rely on physical skill anymore. He has to rely on a machine, the M60 robot. He builds a machine to do the killing for him because he is physically too weak to hold a gun and shoot Jack. It is the ultimate science bitch solution. He mechanizes his vengeance. The MacGyver who built a battery in the desert is now building a slaughter machine in the trunk of a Cadillac. One final insane observation about the timeline. Walt spends months in that cabin. A significant amount of time passes. His hair grows back. He grows a beard. It is the longest time jump in the series. Those months of silence are his penance. He has to sit with his thoughts. He has to think about Jane, about Crazy 8, about Tuco, about Gail, about Mike, about Hank. The ghosts are his roommates. By the time he leaves, he has likely processed all of it and reached a state of nihilistic acceptance. He isn't asking for forgiveness. He is beyond redemption. He is just looking for an ending that fits the story he told himself. As the police swarm the empty bar and the glass of whiskey sits there reflecting the blue and red lights, we know the storm is coming. The ghost of Heisenberg is driving a stolen car across the country. He has a machine gun. He has a vial of ricin. He has a score to settle, and he has nothing to lose. We are approaching the finale, the last stand. In the next and final chapter, we are going to drive that Cadillac into the compound. We are going to analyze Felina. We will discuss the perfect ending, the baby blues song, the touch of the stainless steel tank, and the final breath of the man who knocked. We will break down why it is considered the greatest series finale of all time. Get your blue meth ready because the chemistry is about to reach 100% purity. We have arrived at the end of the road. The gas tank is empty, the windshield is cracked, and the sirens are wailing in the distance. We are here to talk about Felina, the series finale, the episode that carries the weight of 5 years of obsession on its shoulders. Ending a show like Breaking Bad is impossible. The expectations were too high. If they messed it up, the legacy would be ruined. Looking at you, Game of Thrones. But Vince Gilligan and his team didn't just land the plane. They performed an acrobatic barrel roll and landed it perfectly on a dime. Felina is widely considered the greatest series finale in the history of television. But before we watch the king die, let's decode the title. Felina, it is an anagram for finale. That is the easy one. But for the chemistry nerds, it is deeper. Fe, iron, is found in blood. Li, lithium, is used in the production of meth. Na, sodium, is found in tears. Blood, meth, and tears. The 3 elements that composed the life of Walter White. And for the music lovers, it references the Marty Robbins song El Paso, about a cowboy who falls in love with a woman named Felina, shoots a man, flees, and returns only to die in her arms. In Walt's case, Felina isn't a woman, it is the blue meth. He returns to die in the arms of his true love, chemistry. It is poetic, it is perfect, and it sets the stage for the final act of the American tragedy. The episode begins with a ghost story. Walt is back in Albuquerque. He visits the Schwartz estate, Elliot and Gretchen, the billionaires. They walk into their beautiful home, discussing wine, completely unaware that the Grim Reaper is standing in the shadows. Walt reveals himself. He doesn't scream, he doesn't attack, he just stands there. The way he manipulates them is pure Heisenberg genius. He piles the money on the table, $9 million. He tells them to give it to Flynn on his 18th birthday as a charitable donation. He uses their own ego against them. If they give the money, they look like saints. If they don't, they live in fear. And the fear comes from the snipers. 2 red laser dots appear on their chests. Walt tells them he has hired the 2 best hitmen west of the Mississippi to watch them forever. If the money doesn't get to Flynn, they die. Elliot and Gretchen are terrified. They agree. Walt leaves, and then comes the punchline that makes you scream with laughter and relief. The hitmen are Skinny Pete and Badger. They are hiding in the bushes with laser pointers they bought for $5. It is the ultimate bluff. It proves that Walt doesn't need violence anymore. He just needs his reputation. He weaponized the legend of Heisenberg to secure his family's future using two stoners and a toy. And the moment he pays them and they ask if it's cool, and Walt says, "I think it's good," it is a callback to the pilot. He is tying up the loose ends with the very people who helped him start. Then we have the ricins, the stevia packet. This is the moment we waited seasons for. Lydia Rodart Quayle, the nervous chamomile tea-drinking corporate villain. She meets Todd at the coffee shop. She sits at her usual table. She asks for stevia. Walt appears. He is disheveled. He plays the part of the desperate man. He offers a new cooking method, a lie. Lydia dismisses him. She pours the stevia into her tea. She stirs it, she drinks it, and we, the audience, lose our minds. We know what was in that packet. The ricin found its home. Later, when Walt calls her, she is lying in bed, looking pale. "I think I have the flu," she says. And Walt, with the coldest delivery imaginable, says, "Goodbye, Lydia." He admits he poisoned her. He doesn't let her wonder. He wants her to know who killed her. It is petty, it is cruel, and it is incredibly satisfying. Lydia represented the corporate greed that fueled the business, and she died by her own routine. She was a creature of habit, and her habit killed her. But the emotional core of the finale is the kitchen scene. Walt visits Skylar. She is living in a grim apartment. She is smoking. She looks broken. The DEA is watching her. Walt bypasses them. He stands in her kitchen. The pillar in the room visually separates them, a brilliant directorial choice. Skylar tells him, "If you tell me one more time that you did this for the family," she is ready to scream. She can't take the lie anymore. And then Walter White finally tells the truth. "I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. And I was alive." This confession is the most important line in the series. It vindicates Skylar. It validates everything the audience suspected. It wasn't about cancer. It wasn't about groceries. It was about a man with an inferiority complex who finally found something he was the best in the world at. He admits his selfishness, and in doing so, he frees Skylar. He gives her the coordinates to Hank's body, the lottery ticket. He gives her the bargaining chip to get out of legal trouble. He touches baby Holly one last time. He watches Flynn come home from school from a distance, hidden behind a pillar, unseen. He is a ghost saying goodbye to the living. He accepts that he cannot be part of their lives anymore. He leaves. Now we drive to the compound, the Nazi clubhouse, Jack Welker and his gang. Walt pulls up in the Cadillac. He demands to see Jesse. He claims Jesse is his partner, and he wants to talk. Jack is going to kill him. Jack doesn't care. He takes Walt's keys. He puts his gun to Walt's head. But Walt plays the insult card. He accuses Jack of partnering with a rat. He says Jesse is a snitch. This bruises Jack's pride. Jack drags Jesse out of the cage to prove he isn't a partner, but a slave. Look at him. And Walt looks. The look on Bryan Cranston's face when he sees Jesse, scarred, chained, broken, is heartbreaking. The rage he felt in Granite State evaporates. He realizes what he has done to this kid. He realizes the monster he created. In that split second, the plan changes. He isn't there to kill Jesse. He is there to save him. The tackle. Walt dives at Jesse. He knocks him to the floor. He covers his body with his own. This is the act of redemption. He acts as a human shield. And then he presses the button on the car keys. Outside, the trunk of the Cadillac pops open. The M60 machine gun, mounted on a swivel arm powered by a garage door motor, spins up. Ra-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. The sound is deafening. The gun sweeps back and forth, turning the clubhouse into Swiss cheese. Bullets tear through the walls, the furniture, and the Nazis. It is a massacre. It is science bitch applied to warfare. Walt calculated the angle. He parked the car perfectly. He engineered his own cavalry. Inside, Walt and Jesse are pinned to the floor, the bullets flying over their heads. When the firing stops, the room is silent. Dust floats in the air. Everyone is dead, except Todd and Jack. Todd survives the hail of bullets. He looks out the window, confused. Mr. White? He seems genuinely surprised that his mentor would do this. And then Jesse moves. Jesse Pinkman, the boy in the box, wraps his chains around Todd's neck. He strangles him. He snaps his neck. It is visceral. It is personal. Jesse needed to be the one to kill Todd. He needed to kill the man who shot Andrea, the man who tortured him. Walt watches, allowing Jesse to take his revenge. He doesn't interfere. Todd falls. The polite psychopath is dead. Then Jack. Jack is crawling. He is bleeding. He grabs a cigarette. He looks at Walt, who picks up a gun. Jack tries to bargain. You want your money? You pull that trigger, you'll never know where it is. Bang! Walt shoots him mid-sentence. Blood spatters the camera lens. It is a direct parallel to Hank's death. Hank died mid-sentence. Walt denies Jack the dignity of a final speech. He doesn't care about the money anymore. The barrels can rot in the desert. He just wants them dead. And now, the final confrontation. Walt slides the gun to Jesse. Do it, he says. You want this. He wants Jesse to kill him. He wants to give Jesse the ultimate catharsis. He wants to die by the hand of the son he wronged. Jesse picks up the gun. He points it at Walt's head. His hand is shaking. He looks at Walt. He sees the wound. Walt has been hit by a stray bullet from his own machine gun. He is bleeding from the side. He is already dying. Jesse sees this, and Jesse realizes that killing Walt would be doing Walt a favor. It would be following one last order. Jesse lowers the gun. Do it yourself. He drops it. He refuses to be Walt's tool one last time. He walks out. Walt follows him to the door. They look at each other. Walt nods, a small, almost imperceptible nod. It is a nod of respect, of apology, of goodbye. Jesse gets in the El Camino. He smashes through the gate, and he screams. That scream, the laugh cry of a man who has escaped hell, is the release we all needed. Jesse is free. Walter White is alone. He is dying. He walks into the lab, the super lab that the Nazis built. He looks around. He isn't scared. He looks nostalgic. He sees the equipment. He touches a stainless steel tank. He wipes a gauge with his sleeve. He leaves a bloody handprint on the metal. He is admiring the setup. He is home. This is where he belongs. Not with his family, not in a cabin, but in a lab. The opening chords of Baby Blue by Badfinger start to play. Guess I got what I deserved. The lyrics are hauntingly perfect. Vince Gilligan fought the music supervisors for this song. They wanted something modern. He said, "No, it has to be this." And he was right. The special love I have for you, my baby blue. The song isn't about a woman, it's about the meth. It's about the product. Walt falls to the floor. The camera is on a crane. It starts to rise. Walt is lying on his back, staring up at the ceiling. He has a slight smile on his face. His eyes are open. He looks at peace. He died in the place he loved, doing the thing he was best at on his own terms. The police swarm the lab, guns drawn. They ignore the body. They are too late. Heisenberg has already left the building. The screen cuts to black. Created by Vince Gilligan. Why is this finale perfect? Because it gave us everything without pandering. It gave us the action, the machine gun. It gave us the emotion, the kitchen scene. It gave us the justice, Todd and Jack. It gave us the mercy, Jesse. And it gave us the tragedy, Walt's death. It didn't try to redeem Walt. He died a villain. But he died a villain who accomplished his goals. He got the money to his kids, presumably. He killed his enemies. He freed his partner. He accepted his nature. It respected the audience's intelligence. It tied up every loose end, the gray matter, the ricin, the money, the family, without feeling like a checklist. It felt organic, and the what-ifs are silenced. There is no ambiguity. Unlike The Sopranos, the screen didn't cut to black mid-scene. We saw the body. We saw the pulse stop. We know he is dead. But the legend lives on. The Heisenberg graffiti we see in the flash-forwards proves that he became a myth. He became the Billy the Kid of the Southwest. And in a twisted way, that is exactly what Walter White wanted in the pilot. He wanted to feel alive. He wanted to matter. He achieved it, but the cost was everything he held dear. There is a production fact about the final shot. Bryan Cranston wasn't actually dead, obviously, but he had to hold his breath and keep his eyes open without blinking for a long time while the crane moved up. It was physically difficult. The dead stare was acting, but the exhaustion was real. After 5 years of playing this character, of living in this dark headspace, Cranston said he felt a massive weight lift off him when they yelled, "Cut!" for the final time. He shaved the beard, he took off the glasses, and Walter White was gone. The legacy of Breaking Bad is that it changed television. It proved that you could take a protagonist and turn him into an antagonist, and the audience would follow you into the abyss. It proved that cinematography in TV could be cinema quality. It proved that details matter, that the color of a shirt or a prop in the background could tell a story. It created a universe that is still expanding with Better Call Saul and El Camino. But the core story, The Ballad of Heisenberg, is a complete perfect circle. From the khakis flying in the air to the bloody handprint on the steel tank, it is a masterpiece of structure. So, as you drift off to sleep visualizing the blue sky of New Mexico, remember the lesson of Walter White. Chemistry is the study of change. Electrons change energy levels. Molecules change bonds. Elements combine and change into compounds. But that's all of life, right? It's the constant, violent, beautiful cycle of transformation. We all break bad a little bit sometimes. We all have a Heisenberg inside us, a part of us that wants to be the king, that wants to be powerful. But most of us have a Hank or a Skylar or a Jesse that keeps us in check. Walt killed those parts of himself, and he burned bright and hot like magnesium before turning to ash. Thank you for taking this ride. Thank you for cooking with us. Thank you for analyzing the colors, the science, and the tragedy. The lab is closed, the product is shipped, the story is told. Now close your eyes, listen to the silence of the desert, and remember the name. Heisenberg.